All right, welcome today. We're all here gathered to talk about where do you want to go for spring break when you're in college, right? So there's an important question, okay? Where will you live? It doesn't stop there. It's a question you can consider. There's a lot of answers to it. But more importantly, where will you live when? There's an important word there, when. It's not if, because none of us are getting out of this life alive. Right? We may think it. There's immortality people are talking about, but that's to be seen. Maybe only one person, depending on your religion, that we know in history has done that. But for us who are here as mortals, looking at this is a serious issue. So for us, we've listened to you over time. When we started in the business years ago, this was about retirement. Retirement was, okay, now I'm leaving work. This is super exciting. I got this money and all this freedom, and what do I do with it? And that's been a great career. It's been 30 years in that career so far. What we've noticed over time is that money was simply a resource that supports your dreams, your aspiration, your hopes, your retirement, your family, your children who sometimes move back. Yeah, you can. It's okay to laugh at that. And all the different things that go with it. So what we decided to do here is listen even deeper, and this is fundamental. Where will I live? Where will I live when? So we brought resources together. This isn't to be a formal program. If you don't mind, it's not some lecture. I do talk a lot. No. I admit it now, I'm going to say it. But my goal is to speak less, listen more, listen to questions, give a few items that you've shared, but also we've got a panel of experts up here that you're going to see who have graciously come together to answer the questions we might have of where will I live when? Whether it's senior living facility, whether it's staying at home as long as we possibly can, whether it's with my children who don't know I want to move in yet. Right? Who'd like that? My daughter, Samantha, is 15 years old, and she's told my wife and I, hey, Dad, all she does on Zillow is looks at $20 million homes and above. Yeah, exactly. In Southern Florida, by the way. So she said this to my wife and I, Deb. She goes, hey, Dad, that's all right. When you get older, you can live in one of the wings of my home. So what I said is, that's fantastic, Samantha. You know you got to do something to buy one of those, right? She goes, oh, yeah. She knows. Anyway, but so our plan is to live in one of the wings of my daughter's home and then have her care for us, right? Dave, she'll wait on us hand and foot as she writes books and becomes the next J.K. Rowling. At least that's her plan for now. At 15, that could change. But for us here, we just want to have a forum today with which you get the opportunity to begin the discussion. Be it for you, be it for friends, be it for your parents, or be it for yourself, siblings, someone else. Another aspect of this too, which we won't talk as much about today, but we may have special needs children. What happens when I'm no longer caring for them? So there's some offshoots from this. We probably won't delve into all the specifics, but we're also going to have lunch where we can sit together, tables afterward where we can sit down and talk individually. We're going to have some sign-ups later today to go actually visit some of the facilities tomorrow. So this is the first time we've done this. It's a great response. Thanks for coming out. Who here thinks this is an important topic to them? Oh, yeah. That's great, because if you didn't, you're in the wrong program. Because I was going to actually come and say, this is a book club, how to get to know a person better. People are like, are you sure? At any rate, so what I'd like to do today is to start, if anybody here has ever been at one of my programs, what do I start with? Jokes. Well, that's a pretty funny one. So today I'm going to do something totally different. I'm going to talk about things that I really dislike. No, I'm not really, I'm joking with you. That was my first joke as you go through. So I've compiled over time, which is quite funny, a list of these, which I thought was funny. So I'm going to just give you a couple of them. This comes from not just me, it comes from you guys and people you've enjoyed as well. It was quite funny to say, it's not that I'm afraid to die, I just don't want to be there when it happens. You hear this and you go, are you serious? You think about it for a moment. Talk about getting old. I was getting dressed and a peeping Tom looked in the window and told me to pull down the shades. There's some good. The first sign of maturity is the discovery that the volume knob also turns left. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. I agree. Somebody told me that. Middle age is when you still believe you feel better in the morning. It's like, what? This is a good one. George Burns said this. When I was a boy, the Dead Sea was only sick. There's some really good ones in here, but I don't want to read that one. Here's a good one. How can you die, or how young can you die of old age? That's Stephen Wright. He says it. You think about that sometimes. This one is good. So far, this is the oldest I've been. George Carlin. People ask you how old you are, right? That's a good one as well. I got one or two more here, and then I'll stop. There's some good ones, actually, at some point. At my age, flowers scare me. So as we go through, actually, maybe there's one more here. You're not getting older. You're just becoming a classic. Ah, see? So if they could give you license plates like a car, you'd have the beautiful one, right? So again, a few of the jokes to go through, but also if you know me, one thing we have is I've got this wonderful follow-along book that if any of you have it, it's the workshop book. It's been printed, it's wonderful. In here, it's meant to go along with everything we're talking about today. So if you can, pull that out. And in here, the very first thing that I list at the very top is going big. I am grateful for. So I'm going to give you 60 seconds. Oh, yeah, and I got to click on the clicker. Thank you. There we go. Go big. Beginning gratitude. So take a moment to write down, think about something over the last 90 days that you're super grateful for. It could be an event, a person, a place, a thing, something that's happened, something that hasn't happened. Go ahead and take a moment. I'll actually be quiet for 60 seconds. All right, while some of you are writing, you know the exercise. Anybody want to share what they're grateful for over the last 90 days? I'll share mine. I'm grateful that I've got to spend a lot of time with my daughter who's moving out of the house in the next 90 days. One of my 18-year occupants is going to be moving and going to University of Iowa. So for me, my gratitude is she's decided and that I've been intentional to spend the next 100 days at the house and say no to all trips so that I can be there for every moment that I possibly can to spend with her before she moves out of our house. So for me, that's my massive gratitude. There's others, but I just wanted to bring that one up to give you samples. Anybody like to share what they're grateful for? Yeah, absolutely.
My mom's had a lot of health issues the last 2 years, and we celebrated her 80th birthday last year.
Oh, awesome. That's super cool. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Love it. Love it. Where? Oh, okay, good, good. So here, if you guys know me, whenever somebody participates, I like to give them $100,000, which because of inflation is worth now about 80. I think last program it was worth 90, but it's dropped, right? Yes, absolutely.
I retired on March 1st, so
Woo.
I'm super grateful that I have this new phase I've started.
It's awesome, yeah. Freedom, right? Woo! So retirement, that's awesome. Super cool, super cool. Yes, absolutely, yeah.
My husband, my spouse here. Without him, I'd be lost.
That is awesome. Without Bob, we'd all be lost. That's awesome. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes, absolutely. Modern healthcare. I agree with that. Everyday advancements. That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you as well. Anyone else? You need more candy bars. We got like $1 million in here, so I'm just gonna say. Anyone else?
Who was that last one?
Right here. Yep. Fabulous. Yep. So let's move on a little bit. Actually, I'm going to go back a moment too, because there's a couple things that I want to show you here. Why are we here? Why are we here? We're here to say, you asked, we answer. More important, make a plan before someone else makes it for you. Does that resonate with anyone? Some of you have seen it. I think the panel up here will also tell you that this is very important as we move forward. Another one is, what to know. What are your options? What are the choices? I thought nobody would do this until they had to. I was wrong, right? I was young, naive, but I've seen many of my clients who are just past retirement going, you know what? I no longer want the responsibilities of the house, the upkeep, the taxes. Let's go down the whole list of things that happen. The furnace, the water heater, the thing I didn't know I needed. You know, the electricity goes out. Oh, now I need a well. All these things are things they don't want to look at. So they've often moved there in a continuing care situation or a retirement community where they can have a community around them. Also looking at this is, we're going to address the questions that you have, and then we take a tour in person tomorrow if you'd like with no pressure. You can ask questions today, take a physical tour tomorrow to see what some of the places look like. Because that's one of the most important things. If I want to live here, what is this like? We actually have a client panel as well as some residents who have moved and done this before you. So they can go ahead and give you some of the wisdom and things they have found out in reality as well. So that's going to be super helpful. So we'll give them a hand as they help us as well. Another one I wanted to go through is we have 4 experts on the panel here as well, and then myself, who's just going to moderate today. We have Julie Irvine from Life-Based Communities, and really her question is, what's important to know about the facilities you're considering? So we'll have Julie talk about those for us. Really, really wonderful. We have Lisa Haynes here as well. She's the owner of Bridge Forward and senior move specialist. So senior move specialist, so a lot of questions. Anybody have too much stuff? Do you want to know what the evidence of this was? Pull out your phone and tell me how many photos you have on it. It's a contest. Anybody tell me how many photos you have and see if you can beat Chris. If you know how to look at it, I'll tell you my answer. You can tell me if you beat it or not. 5,000? That's
6580.
6580? Pretty good. Mine? 1,879. All right, let's look at mine. 100,698. If you want evidence of abundance, two teenage girls on your sign-in, and you'll see 50 pictures a day going, what's that? So evidence of abundance and too much stuff can happen as well. So as we go across our panel as well, we have Dave Watson, an estate planning attorney, who's been called into a court case, so he'll be here a bit later as well. We have Tom Wozniak. Anybody here ever heard of Medicare? Medicare planning? Aunt Irma, there's some things going on there, right, as well. And then we actually have a wonderful participant here, Gail, who's from Newcastle, who's living there, who can answer wonderful questions. She's very eloquent. She'll be able to help us out with questions as well. So there's some really good resources we have here. I just want to make sure you understand how we're going to go forward. Most importantly, what I would like to do first, before we even head into much of this, to go big is great, but what I want to ask you is a question. What do you think of when you think of a retirement facility? Let's just talk it. When you think of a retirement home, what's the first thing that comes to mind? You can just shout it out. Old people? Is that what somebody said? Somebody said that? Yeah, old people. What else?
Walkers.
Walkers, playing bridge. Like it? Yes, yeah. So those who've lived in it versus those who haven't yet have sometimes different opinions. Have you noticed that too? So for me, when I was younger, I used to think of it as my great-grandmother passed away, and she only went there for the last 2 or 3 weeks before she passed away. It was just a bridge toward then. So for me, it was people sitting in wheelchairs in the hallway, slumped over where I wasn't sure if they were asleep, right? That's what it was to me, and it was a facility like Walbrook. You know, like it's a place you put people when, you know, maybe they're visited sometimes, maybe not, and that just seemed really cold to me. Now, that's what most people have an impression. Anybody, like, that's what your impression of a retirement home is, right? You may have seen it. Now, the cool thing about that is that's changed dramatically. So I'll give you a little bit of a story. Why is this up front of mind to me? So my grandfather passed away last year in March. He was 94 when he passed away, but in October of, say, 7, 8 years ago, he had had a cold, and the virus attacked his pericardium, so he actually ended up with congestive heart failure. So he didn't have such great health at that point, and my grandma had passed away 2 years before. He was in a home by himself, and it was just overwhelming. There was too much stuff going on for him to actually function well, right? He had his dog, which was great. She was a great companion, but she couldn't cook meals for him, right? So it was one of those things where you could see him declining steadily, and we found this place in Fort Dodge, Iowa, called Bickford Home. And Bickford Home for him became a place that it wasn't the normal facility you look at. It was actually beautiful painted walls, wonderful paintings in it, a courtyard, a great facility. There's only about 40 residents in it as well. And the beautiful thing for him is we moved him in thinking he might have a few months at most left at his rapid rate of decline. 8 years later, he was homecoming king, he was Valentine king. He was, I can go through the pictures. He found a lady friend, which he'd only call her that because my grandma, he wanted to honor her, but lady friend who had grown up across the road from him. They were born like about 700 yards apart, didn't really know each other, it was quite funny. Born at 2 different times there though. But amazing to see, he had a plethora of 8 years we got to spend with Grandpa, right? Because he obtained community, meaning, life, and care and help. So to me, I've seen the benefit of what this is. Don't discount that community. There's a huge part of this as well. So part of this is for me to share some of my stories so you feel better too, maybe sharing the things that you want to or ask questions about. Feel free both around your table or asking me those questions, but I'd like to do that as well. But the big one I have for you today is, what are the questions you have today? We don't have to answer them right now, but give me an idea, just so our panel and everybody else, give me an idea, what kind of question might you have today about this subject? Where will I live? Anybody? You can shout one out. Yeah, Kitty. Cost, good, yes, beautiful. That is a paramount one. If we can't afford to live there, we can't live there. Good point. Others? Yeah.
Protecting assets.
Protecting assets. How can I protect assets from them? Good. Yeah.
In-state or out-of-state?
In-state or out-of-state, good call. Absolutely. Will I have family around me or not, right?
Discussion with parents.
Discussion with parents, absolutely. Absolutely, really good point.
Proximity to children.
Proximity to children, absolutely. That's a huge one. And if it's not in their home, you want to be close. I appreciate that, Dave. That's a good one. Anyone else? What other questions might we have? Yeah, absolutely. Activities, absolutely. Freedom and activities going on. Good. Others?
Well, assuming that the promises are only as good as the people that make the promises, how do you evaluate them
Yes.
before you sign on the dotted line?
Spoken like a true head of a trust department. Jack has great questions. How do we evaluate what's behind the financials that are listed, right? Are they going to be there to care for me if they make the promise? That's a great point. So to us, these are all the big concerns that we have. There's more and more. But I'd like to get those out there because those give us some freedom when we're asking our experts as well, what might we cover? So this is for you. I don't have any agenda other than to feed you some information that helps you make the decision. Something we look at. We look at ourselves, our whole team, as an accompanist. We're here with you to accompany you along the ride to help you make the best decisions you can and be in the background. We're here to make sure you're living your best life. One of these functions we're finding is this. We're going to bring you some information we hope that's very valuable to where will I be, where will I live. So as we go along, that is the main idea. So one thing you'll find here with us at Gentian, we look at money as a resource. If you've looked at these before, we've talked about these quadrants. And as you'll see this bottom left quadrant, as we look at the resources, that's going to be money, things. Most people in the world look to, I need to build money so that I can retire. And they spend their whole life building money in these resources so they can retire. But then they ask one question. What is it you wouldn't trade for more money? Anybody an idea? Want to shout one out? Time? Health? Family? Spouse? Happiness. I like this. But these are the things, these are some of your core values. Religion often is in there, so my faith. So these are the core values. These are the things most important to us. Now, how about the experience that have made you who you are? The experiences with your family, both good and bad. These are who made you who you are. So with that, that's an extremely important part, even from here on out. My experiences, what are they going to be? Where might they be? And then contribution. What do I give to the world? What's my offering? So when we look at these quadrants, we're looking at different ways. At Gentian, we want to help you plan retirement, live well in retirement, and then give to who you want to, not to the government. So be purposeful about it, right? So as we go through, that's our purpose. This is the live it side of the equation, but helping make sure that you can preserve everything you want in the way you want to. Okay? So that's what we'll be doing, looking at today. So what I'd like to do at this point is welcome Gail Johnson. So as you can see here, Gail is a registered psychotherapist and clinical associate professor. So if you have a question, she's going to analyze it really deeply. So the best answer she could give is, what do you mean by that? I'm just messing with you, Gail. I'm just messing with you. So I did learn from Chris Voss, when somebody asks you a really tough question, the best thing is to take the last two words and just make it a question. You can try this on your spouse unless they're here, but when they'll say something like, hey, Chris, are you lying? He goes, lying? That's all you have to do, and the conversation will continue. You'll never have to say another thing. So this is Chris Voss. He's the FBI expert in hostage negotiation, but I wanted to bring that up to you. Anyway, Gail, and that's way off topic, so that was a rabbit hole I didn't plan. She's a resident of Newcastle Place down the road here for the last 6 years. She coordinates facilities for the Mequon Parkinson Support Group as well, so thank you tremendously for that. That's fantastic. And the North Shore area. And her key interest is studying our second stage of life and ageism. So there's a great person I know, Ken Dykewald. He's out on the West Coast. I've been fortunate enough to correspond with him. And he very much believes in ageism is a big issue. For instance, you look at commercials for those portraying the retired population, and they're usually 40 years old. You've seen that? Yeah, that's not me. It's okay, you can show me, real. Here's who we are. And they say, well, that's because you always believe you're 20 years younger than you are. Actually, this is a good question. Then we're gonna go to Gail. How many of you, how old do you think you are? Go ahead and shout it out. Not outside, inside. Because there's a physical age we all have. We've achieved so many years, but I'm about 12. Yeah, exactly. How about you? Will anybody shout out the age they feel inside?
40.
40. As a person, good. Anyone else? Just shout them all out. How old do you feel? 50? Excellent. Good. 50? I hear some murmuring as well, which is kind of fun. 60, some days 80, some days 30. Depending on whether the weather front. I can tell you when the weather's blowing through now, right? Exactly, as you do. Good, well, thank you on that. But what I'd like to do is bring Gail up, and Gail's going to give us a little bit of a discussion on what she'd like to, about her expertise, her experience more importantly as well, and things that you guys may want to look out for. Gail? Let's give Gail a warm welcome, please. Got it? Yep. I have to turn it on here. If I can figure out how to turn it on, I will. Is there a button?
Button on the bottom.
I got it.
There, it's just that simple. So where's the knob? Where do you turn the volume up?
Thank you. I'm going to talk about, Chris did a marvelous introduction to much of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about living with purpose. And I came to that because with Julie, over the years, I've been doing some marketing presentations, and they would always call it downsizing. And even as you say that word, downsizing, it doesn't exactly inspire you to do the kind of thinking that I'm asking you to do. So we want to figure out what living our life really means, and then make our home where that life becomes possible. It's perspective, not age, that matters most. In aging, our goals and motives in our everyday lives shift completely. This is out of a book that I read some years ago. I think you'll occasionally see him interviewed. His name is Atul Gawande, and the book is Being Mortal. He is a physician. He writes so well. I have reread it several times. Another quote, think about who said what I'm going to say. I figured out a mindset to have that when you focus on the past, that's your ego. When I focus on the future, it's my pride. I kind of try to focus on the moment, in the present. That's humility. Any ideas? Did the Bucks win last night? It was Giannis who said that quote. I was so struck by it one day. I don't normally read the sports page, but it was in this beautiful little outlay, this quote from him. And I thought, certainly he's done some of the same reading I have. So living with purpose. What do you think we need to think about to do that, to live with purpose? Well, let me tell you, in the process, we have to be self-compassionate. And I'm serious about that. And we have to, at the same time, allow ourselves to realize we may have some negative emotions. There's obviously going to be some anxiety and stress, but we can consider how we choose to react to those negative emotions. We can think ahead of some possible outcomes that we prefer in our life, and that's a more helpful way to get through that anxiety and stress. Chris referred to all the stuff, all the attachments. It's helpful to think, what meaning have they had for you up to this point? Was it power? Was it prestige? Was it pleasure? There may be no right answer, but I found it worth thinking about. And trust me, I think we can all be happier and truly live a more purposeful life. But Chris also referred to the ageism that we're surrounded with, the biases and the stereotypes based on age. And then what I've discovered in living with older people, and especially in working with marketing, that some of us have internalized that ageism. It's kind of a prejudice toward our feared future self. I'll give you a good example. A gentleman I know gets up every morning, I'm not kidding, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and does his exercise. I always admired that. I'm out with the dog at 6:30, but I'm not exercising at 3 to 4. But he was so angry about it. And when we were talking about ageism, he realized he had bought into the myth that he was only exercising because he was old, instead of putting on that the idea it was making him healthier and giving him a longer life. We can increase our longevity. There's some marvelous research coming out, and even some done locally at UWM with a professor that I admire. And what that shows is that intergenerational programs, mindfulness, if you don't know what that is, there is much coming about at that role. I'll talk a little bit about it. Changes to environment, activities, movement, family and friends. The research shows you can add 4.5 to 7 years to your life if we have those components. Part of when we do this thinking, is that our mature years really can reflect both some sadness and happiness. But the second part of life can also have that suffering and darkness. But we have a way to work creatively with it. So we want to let go of old judgments, old hurts, and that ego that Janis talked about. If we have an opportunity now, and that's the best part, about not being preoccupied with collecting stuff, and instead concentrate, and Chris mentioned this, on giving back to the world and to our community. We can do this simply by being who we are, and we can see the whole and not just the parts. If you watch your children and grandchildren in the rush of their everyday living, you see where they concentrate more on the parts. One of the best parts about being in this second stage of life is looking at the whole. I love when I have an opportunity to do that. Nothing is lost. The events in your life do not disappear. You can begin to understand the deeper nature and really examine memories that are stored in your heart. I love living in community, cocktail hour or dinner. People will share because we're getting to know them, perhaps. I love what that listening does for me, but what it triggers some interesting memories that I haven't thought about for a while, and love sharing and having a joy in it. Richard Rohr, a book that probably was the most instrumental in really getting me to think differently. It's a book called Falling Upward, sounds strange, doesn't it? But he gave me a structure that has made so much sense to me. He talks about 2 stages in life. The first half of life is to create a container for one's life. And then we ask ourselves 3 questions in that first stage. That's the ego stage that Janis was talking about. So in that stage, we're trying to figure out what makes me significant. So it's a part of who you were growing up, what talents you developed, your education. Then how can you support yourself? That became what career, what work you chose, and then who will go with me? Chose to marry, have children. But this second half of life, which hopefully we're all in, but not everyone that gets older gets there, provides a return to simplicity. And we don't lose what we learned from all that complexity of the first stage, but finally now I think we are able to deal with the whole range of feelings. So basically, I love this. This sums him up. The first half of life is writing the text, and the second half is writing the commentary on that text. And that, I honestly feel I do so much of the time. I love figuring out who my mentors were and what it was instrumental in my life. A new book that is quite recent is by Arthur Brooks, and it's called Build the Life You Want. He's a researcher, but the part I found fascinating was Oprah had a huge piece in the front commentating on what the book had meant to her and his research. He says, between the conditions around you and your response to them is a space to think and make decisions. In this space, you have freedom. Again, stressing something Chris was referring to. I think as we get older, we think we've lost our freedom. If we make those decisions and choices, we can maintain our freedom to make those choices. So you want to choose to try remodeling the world, or you can start by just changing how you react to it. He also says, I don't know what this day will bring, but I will love others and allow myself to be loved. What is the most loving thing to do right now? That's a helpful question to ask as you're thinking about all these issues. Then you're not going to believe another book that just came out, and you're going to say, well, what does this have to do with this stage of life? It's called Quitting a Life Strategy. It's a very helpful book because that is what we are doing. We're quitting some things and we're taking on some other things. Like quitting maybe living in the home we lived in for 43 years and taking on a new residence. When you quit, you are choosing life itself. To be alive is to take these leaps. If you can't imagine another life, you're quitting on your obligation to be alive. Think about it. Some people journal as they're doing some of this process. I've never been very good at journaling. I can't tell you how many people have given me journals, and they are stacked up. The exception, believe it or not, happened a few months ago. We had an interim executive director when I was president of the council, and we worked so well together. And when he was leaving this last time, he gave me this beautiful journal. And I thought he was one of the finest people I've met in life. And I thought, Gail, you cannot put this journal in the stack of journals. So what I did, I meditate every day. And so I started taking another step with my meditation. Out of my daily meditation, I take a word, just a phrase maybe, so it's not a big thing to do. I write it in this journal. And I kind of used that to guide me that day in terms of maybe what I'm going to be facing or working with kind of thing. And I had just, adding that has been so significant for me. One last questioning kind of process I found really helpful. It's called Living Fully and Dying Well. See, Chris, I picked up on everything. By Reuben Job. Embrace change. Now that's hard for some people in that second stage, but if we can do it. COVID truly put us to the test, I think. Enjoy the freedom of getting older. Social, we talked about that before. Continue to be as social as you can be. Big one, ignore ageism. It's all around us, as Trish said. If you watch the ads, then, it's upsetting to me. Stay open to reinterpreting your life experiences. And that's what I say the joy of this second stage of life is. You're listening and you're caring about those insights that you've come to. And then be the change you want to see. And the last one he says is embody the admirable characteristics of loved ones who have died. One of the things I've begun to do, and I've done it 3 or 4 times, in fact, sadly, I did it last week, I get goosebumps telling you about it. I have, when I see an obituary for a person that I feel truly changed my life, these are mentors or fellow supervisors, or I go to their funeral. And I do that because I think often their children do not know their mother or father the way I knew them and know the significance of their lives in my life. So that just has been one of the things I've added too. So prepare yourself emotionally. Nothing is lost. That's one of those ageism that somehow it's over, we've lost everything. The events in your life do not disappear. Think about that when you're getting rid of stuff. You begin to understand your deeper self and examine the memories that are stored in your heart. Thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you. That was absolutely wonderful. Wonderful. And I think she gave us an awful lot to think about, too, if you go through that. Did anybody here take notes? Yeah, I took probably as many notes as she has total, which is quite fun. But a couple things that struck me is identity. We talk a lot about this. What is your identity tied to? At different stages of life, it might have been a title, it might have been what you had, it might have been who you were, but I make it's who you are. Always keep it who you are, not what the world tells you it is. The importance of you is extremely important to make sure we keep that. The story I have is my uncle, on my wife's side, was a Navy admiral. On his retirement day, there was 4,000 Navy shipmen who were saluting him. I think Condoleezza Rice was there, and he told me this when we're in Zion, Illinois, at a place having tofurkey, which I didn't realize was a thing. Yes, it is. He goes, Chris, you want to know what the worst day of my life was? I'm like, well, what was it? The day after the day I retired. Because he said, all I am now is an old man on the street. From this Navy admiral. So you look at this as if his identity was tied to that title. The next day, when he's a movie steward, he's just helping kids with tickets. They just think he's some guy at the movies, right? So never judge a person that way by identity. I think that was extremely helpful. The other 17 that I have were, no, I'm just joking. I'm just kidding. The Building the Life You Want book, did anybody notice that? Anybody here been on the book club? That was a book that we had, and we've been doing the Brooks Brothers. There's another one by David Brooks recently. He's got The Second Mountain, also Getting to Know a Person. So a lot of those books are things we study now. In an age, I think you mentioned this too, in an age of acceleration which we're going to live, set that in. Your great-great-great-great-grandparents, when they were born, during their 100 years of life, if they lived that long, all information in the world doubled. Over that 100 years, and that was pretty astounding. They maybe had 5 to 7 major decisions in a day. Should I milk the cows or should I not? That being one. Yeah, you don't have a choice there. You have to, right? But as you look at it today, as of 1990 or so, all information in the world doubled about every 2 years. As of today, it's about every 6 hours. Our minds were built for the 100-year world. Why do you feel overwhelmed? There's so much, you're getting a lifetime in 6 hours. Anybody feel like that sometimes? Yeah, you watch the news, you watch somebody come in, so just always regard that. And I think the meditative slowing down is super important. I as well have not expected in my career when I started to attend funerals. I've attended many funerals, and I feel it an honor to be there and sit with the family. And you do get a chance to tell a story of how you knew somebody to the kids who maybe knew them a different way and how important they were in your life, as every one of you will be to all of us as well. That is an absolute gift, and we thank you for letting us do that. We love meeting you before your funeral. Because you guys are funny, you're awesome, and you share a ton with us, but we will be there and will be present when as well. The last one I had was experience dividends. So this is something I think you said in a different way. We call it experience dividends. There's two things I want to talk about here. We talk a lot about investing money, keeping it, saving it. This concept called experience dividends. So what do you do when you buy a stock and it pays dividends? It pays you some money every quarter as long as you own it, right? Do you want to know something even cooler, even better? Experience dividends. That trip to Colorado that went awry, but all the funny stories that come from it, you can elicit a laughing response from your entire family from that one experience in Colorado. Hey, remember when we ran out of gas on the way up the mountain, on the way to Estes Park or whatever it is, and then the camper, you were so afraid you were on the floor because you couldn't look out the window when we were going up Pikes Peak? That was me. And that was just last year. But if you look at the experience dividends you have, you can elicit those, and those pay for life and beyond. So never hesitate to invest in experience dividends with your family, friends, and those who are important to you. So those are 4 or 5 things, actually. There's 100 things I got out of your talk, but Gail, thank you tremendously, really. Any questions for Gail? Good, okay, I want to make sure. She covered things very well. I thought it was absolutely outstanding. Let me go a little forward in the program too here. So looking at a couple things about aging in place. So key considerations for aging in place as well. There's some great stories here. I don't want to cover too much of this, but as you're going to see, this is in your manual. Here's some things to look at. I looked at what things might help me age in place. So if you had a choice to live somewhere, most of you would raise your hand to say, I want to live at home as long as I can. Is that correct? Raise your hand if that's true. If you're asleep, that's all right. If you feel like your head is getting heavy and you're like you can't keep it up, that's all right, go with it. We'll have somebody wake you up later. But you've got things here like ventilation system, which becomes more important as we become more sensitive to the outdoor pollens. Grab bars, help buttons, things today that you can wear, they're wearables. My mom, 10 weeks ago, I get this notification on the way home from coaching volleyball. Hard fall, notified, Kathy Doty. I'm like, what? I didn't know what it was, didn't know she set me up as an emergency contact, but myself and my uncle had both gotten this same reach out. Her Apple Watch showed that she had fallen very hard on the floor. She had separated her elbow, and she was actually having the paramedics come during that time. I had no idea this was even a feature on an Apple Watch. But I found out very quickly. Are wearables important? They can be incredibly important, especially if you're home alone. Okay, so things to consider. Smart floors, slippery floors and carpets are not your friend. Anybody notice that? Yes, I know it now at 54. Smart water meters, bedside call units, stair lift, maybe an elevator on the outside of your home. There's a lot of different considerations, but this aging in place is a big part of what we want to talk about. We'll go through more details, if you will, but there's a lot of interest in this. Years ago, I had an idea. It's a business idea. If anybody want to steal it, go ahead, or we can partner. It's called Condo My Home. I want to live where I am, but I want it to be taken care of like a condo. I've shared that with some of you before. Where did this idea come from? It came from you, so I stole it from you originally. But it could be a whole business. Condo My Home. I've got 100 condo units, and I want you to take care of everything except for me living in it, right? And at some point when I can't, then I want to move somewhere that I think is better for myself. Another one as well for this aging in place. This is also in your packet. what it costs to do some of these as well. So these are just resources. I want to make sure you know what's in your packet that you can take with you, because a lot of these modifications are going to be important. You're going to want them. They're there. You have the idea. In our local area, at this present time, it may be way more expensive, because right now, has anybody here tried to hire a contractor in the last year? Yeah. It's not a day late and a dollar short. It's like 10 weeks late and 50% over budget, right? So just be careful with some of these as well. But these are things you're going to want to consider as you move forward too. Question, yeah?
Whenever I think of some of the ones that age in place that's literally paying for countries,
Yes.
like you were studying, and we lived in Arizona for 7 years, if we had wanted to age in place there in a house that was set up for it, I doubt we could have gotten the help for a lot of those things, including an aid, a health aid to come in, full-time, part-time. There just weren't the people available.
Yes.
So I get concerned about people who want to embrace. What if it's that kind of our economy when we don't have the people available?
That's an excellent question. So they used to live in Arizona. Could you all hear the question? Okay, or the state. So there's two things, like in Arizona or other communities. There's not people to care for people. Matter of fact, if you live in Japan, it's even worse. Their older population, there's nobody to take care of them by age. Okay, it's a big, big difference. So they're using assistive robots in Japan. Honda's making them presently, which is interesting. But the statement is, the big question is, you might not be able to get these people when you need them if we're in the wrong part of the economy, wrong point in the economy as well. The good news is we have a massive amount of people looking into solving this. There's going to be different ways we're going to have to accept it, but I think it's doing it early. Maybe doing some of these things early to prepare for these things when you can, if you're planning to age in place. Or considering, if I can't, then what? And that's what this day is about. That's super helpful. So you may not have the people here to help you age in place by doing all these things we need to get done when they need to happen. So maybe it's finding a place that it's already been done is the answer.
I think it's the people who might come in
Yeah.
for health care that may not be available.
Right. Right, exactly. Well, another thing, have anybody noticed the age of most of their doctors? Just saying. Just saying. During your retirement, you might have to find another as well. Have you noticed the age of most of our team? You may call them kids, but I was a kid once. 30 years ago, I looked like I was 12. It was pretty funny. I'm like, I'm surprised anybody came with me, but I guess I had a lot of energy and but if you go back to it, people who are there with you along the way are very, very important. So I appreciate great statements, great points, and thanks for sharing. I really appreciate that. Matter of fact, that deserves $100,000. Yeah. I know it's only 80 grand and it doesn't buy what it did. It may not buy the services up here, but anyway, I appreciate you. Thank you. Yes. So what I would like to do here is, some of the different options to consider. We're gonna have an expert come up and talk about this now in just a moment, but some of the options to consider here as we look at what the choices might be other than living, than aging in place, which we'd all like to, is independent living, assisted living and memory care, skilled nursing homes, rehabilitation, continuing care retirement communities, or CCRCs, looking at home care services. Here's another question. What do I do with my pet? Right? So it's a lot of things. Does it accept pets? My grandpa's did. So his dog came with him. It was great. But here's a lot of different choices that we're going to go over and talk about, pluses and minuses to each one. And these are some of the considerations you'll have. It's a great list to start with. If not at home, then what? Okay? This is not the institution you used to think of. These are vibrant communities that now offer incredible options of what you can do. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as we step in as well. So what I'd like to do at this point is bring up Julie Irvine of Life Space Communities. She's going to answer every tough question so that I don't have to. I'm joking with that, Julie. No, I'm just kidding. So question stash is going to go over the contracts, fees, what to look for, discovery period, be prepared. And I know there might be some deep questions when it comes to fees from the left side of the room here. I'll put this back in here.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Fabulous. Great. All right. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm used to tough questions, so we're good. I do have some handouts I'm going to ask. I believe a couple of people will be handing them out, but I wanted to give you a couple resources as you're starting to think about your search. 2 resources that I think are really a smart place to start looking is there's a source called My Life Site, mylifesite.com. And the other one, and I put in your packet and referring to, that will be very helpful when you're talking and looking at senior living communities and you're looking at costs and really looking under the covers as I talk about this. Are they financially secure? Do they have a good rating? There's a lot to cover. It's called CARF, C-A-R-F International. Now, in the handout, you'll see that I'm giving you, you'll see a piece on CARF International that I actually took out so that we can kind of review, but it is for you to take home. There's also a piece that just says from Brad Breeding, who is My Life Site, comparing rental retirement communities to life plan communities. So I wanted you to be aware of 2 of the many resources where you can go and start vetting and looking at continuum of care communities, or what we call in the industry a life plan, to have a plan for the rest of your life. So I hate calling them facilities. I remember going into a facility and watching the people in front of me drool. When I was looking for my mother 20 plus years ago, who was diagnosed with dementia, I went into a facility and I was a little bit nervous and a little bit scared. So my decision was to keep her at home, bring her in my family, have her live with me, and I was going to be her caregiver for as long as I was able, because we had that conversation up front. And she said, Julie, the day that you can't care for me anymore is the day it's okay to put me in a facility. And I did. And she lived for 3 more years. It started my journey in senior living. I started helping others find resources out there, because the term caregiver 20 plus years ago meant that I was caring for a child, but I wasn't. I was caring for my parents. And from there, I started a different journey. One that I walk through those doors every day of a community where I serve right now is with Gail at Newcastle Place. And I look at it with a servant's heart. I look at it a lot differently. I want to be an educator. I think the one question and one answer I never heard from anybody out there, but I bet you're thinking, when you walk through the door of any of those communities out there, you think you're going to get sold. I promise you we're not used car salesmen. I bet somebody here was in sales in cars probably and made their living, and good for you. But that's not what we do. We're here to educate because, as Chris says, and I always use this is like an elephant. You can only eat it one bite at a time. So let's talk contracts. I believe in transparency. So as you are walking and through these different communities, you're starting to look at independent living. You're starting to look at rental communities. You might be looking at 55 plus communities, moving to Arizona. Great idea in this weather. Those type of communities, I tell you right now, you want transparency. Ask for their contract. If they won't give you their contract, I have to ask, what are they hiding? I want to see their contract. And I have an attorney here who would agree with me, right? Dave agrees. Okay. You need transparency when you go to visit. What's the difference between a rental community and a life plan community? What do they offer? Well, with a rental community, you get, you're basically paying rent. You remember after you left college, most of us rented an apartment. What did you get? You paid a security deposit. You rented. There might be some activities if you're in a community or in an area where you could go and participate, but it's basically you're paying rent. What a life plan contract or a CCRC is on the first part of this handout, you'll see is it provides you with the opportunity to age in place and have the life you have always wanted, a purposeful life. So one of the pieces that I think is important is to know your contracts. As you go to visit continuum care communities, and every single one of those opportunities that you're looking at today, I believe are life plan communities. They have different types of contracts. One type of contract where you pay an entrance fee provides you with the opportunity to know that as you need to move into resources, that they're all under one roof, which means your assisted living, your memory support community, your, if you break something, your rehab, or full skilled care. We're going to talk a little bit about that too. But full skilled care is all underneath one type of community called a life plan community. You pay a one-time entrance fee, and we're going to talk about entrance fees and what that means to you, to have basically the contract knowing that if for any reason you need to move, it is all under one roof for you. So there are different types of life plan contracts. It is explained a little bit in here, and you can also go to my life site to look at that. The difference also when I look at life plan is versus rental. In a rental, if I were to move into a community that was a rental community, or if I went to an assisted living community, how long will my money last? And will Medicaid, do they accept Medicaid? Not Medicare, Medicaid. If I were to run out of assets, will they accept it? That's a question you need to ask. Versus the life plan community, for a not-for-profit life plan community and some for-profits have a benevolent fund that maintains their residents there for the rest of their life. So let me explain the entrance fee. How many of you ever heard of an entrance fee? Just raise your hand. How many of you know what that means? Good. My experts here. A few. So, and you've done a great job. So I want to explain a little bit differently. I look at an entrance fee like a security deposit. It does three things for you. The first thing an entrance fee does is it's a refundable instrument back to your estate. When I talk to seniors, when I talk to colleagues, their biggest concern is, how do I leave a legacy to my church, to my grandchildren, to my foundation? That entrance fee is a sense of security that will go back to wherever you want it to. That's the first sense of security. The second sense of security is, what if I run out of money to pay my monthly fees to live? It's still your money. It's still your pot of money. You can dip into that entrance fee to continue your care, to continue living where you live. But the best part, the third part, and the sense of security you receive is a benevolent fund that has been maintained. You have a home for the rest of your life, no matter what happens to you cognitively, physically, or financially. That's what an entrance fee does. That's why I say take the contract and give it to your favorite friend, your attorney, and as well as your favorite financial planner, and have them review your contracts with you. There are tax considerations that you should consider. If you were to move into an assisted living community or a higher level, which of course, sadly, with my mother, she ended up going to memory support. The Internal Revenue Service has determined that residents in those type of communities have a medical expense, and it can be used as a tax deduction. No, I'm not an accountant, but I will tell you what the IRS says. But if you're starting to look at a life plan community, a CCRC, as they're known, they've determined that residents of those communities that enter into a life care contract can deduct a portion of their monthly fees, as well as their entrance fee, known as a medical expense. So there is a tax benefit. You think you're giving up on your house, you're moving to a community, there is a tax benefit for you. Again, not an accountant here. for-profit versus not-for-profit. I think the best piece, and I think I'm going through here, the best piece I can chat about on profit versus not-for-profit. If you turn to page 12, and it says, understanding and comparing life plan communities, I want to hit on just one thing. It says, and this is again from CARF, a not-for-profit versus a for-profit. Now, I've worked for both. A not-for-profit, your revenues have to exceed your expenses. That's why it's important for you to look at a community's financials and do it, of course, with Chris. Over the long term, I have to cover any future obligation. I need to make sure that we have enough revenue in our to cover those expenses, as well as to mitigate any type of unforeseen expenses. I'm not paying a board. I'm not paying a REIT. Where a for-profit, their goal is, of course, to create more money for those who have invested in that community, where a not-for-profit reinvests those proceeds back into their community to make it even better for you. There's some tax write-offs with a not-for-profit too. Of course, you can consult your favorite person over here on the not-for-profit status. So what's included in your monthly fee? Through that really quickly. How do you know if you go to a continuous care community, what's their health center like? I have to visit their health center. I would encourage you to do that. What's their star rating? What is star rating? I think that's important to know too. In here, I made sure that you had that information from the CMS to know the highest rating you can have in a skilled community is 5 stars. How do you find that out? So I made sure that I put this all together so that you can go to Medicare.gov and you can look up all of these communities that promise you life care. Is that for me?
Thanks, President.
Okay, hello. Would he like to join? Great. So again, a good resource. Let's talk about what to look for and what to ask. I have to tell you, once you put your toe in the water, it's not going to be your first visit. Ken will tell you, it's not your first visit. Ken's visited us quite a few times just to have fun with our residents, so which we love. We are. He is a heck of a cribbage player, just so you know.
It's about how they take kids.
They do. Mm-hmm. We take dogs. We're pet friendly, right? We're pet friendly. So when you go to visit a community, you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared to discuss a few things. Finances. You can talk finances. Our finances, your finances. You want to talk about what's important to you. What hobbies make you smile every day? What would you love to learn? Lifelong learning is so important, as you heard from Gail. Ask to dine with a resident. As you walk through that door, you're going to look at me and you're going to say, she's really good. She's telling me everything I need to know. Actually talking about finances with me. She pulled back the covers and showed me the book. But what you really need to do is sit with them. Ask them tough questions. Taste the food. Oh my gosh, who doesn't love good food? You can tell I love good food. Okay. So you definitely want to sit with the residents and enjoy dining. But part of this is ask if they offer you a trial stay. Put your toe in the water. What's it feel like to live there? And I'm not talking about an overnight. See if you can stay there for a couple of days. Try it. I say try it on for size. And if the community's not right for you, the person that you're talking to should have the opportunity to talk to you about then where else to look. There are only, I think, 4 or 5 options for you to look at. There are many great options here in the Metro Milwaukee area, out in Brookfield, up in West Bend, in the Jackson area. There's a lot of great options. So ask that person, what else? Where else can I look? And compare. Oh my gosh, I love comparison. I think Gail was probably best at that when I first met Gail, comparing us. So that to me is the most important part of visiting a community. Be prepared with your financials. I think that is really important too, to have that discussion. What does it cost? So with a life plan community, you pay a one-time entrance fee that's refunded back to you, a portion thereof, but you also pay a monthly fee. With a rental community, you just pay a monthly fee. Be prepared for the appointment. Go to their website. Take a look at what they have to offer. Then my thought is, please make an appointment to visit. As nice as it is to walk in and go, we're here, we might not be prepared. And again, we're not here to sell you. We really want to give you our undivided attention. 10 minutes of, hey, I just want to stop in and pick up a brochure isn't going to give you what you need. Make an appointment. Be open to discuss what's important to you and be open to discuss any health issues. With life plan communities, they will have an acceptance of not only financial acceptance, but also health requirements. Understand the healthcare benefit that's offered. In some life plan communities, it's an all-inclusive, and others, you get it at a discounted rate. And ask if they have resources to help you right size, because we don't downsize. Like Lisa will talk to you. How do I move out of my home into a home like yours? So I've made that decision. Now what? So I put down a deposit. What if I change my mind? What if there's nothing available that I want? Do you have a wait list? What's that cost? What's my refund? What if I decide I don't want to live here? I want to move to where my kids are. How do I get my money back? That should be in the contracts. That's why I say it's so important to get yourself a contract and take a look at it. I think I am almost out of time, sir.
You're close.
You're close. Again, I just wanted to let you know, this is really high level, very just icing on the cake. What we like to do is a deeper dive when you come to visit. And I'm happy to answer all those questions that you have about the financial security of the community that you're looking at. I think that's an important piece. I just broke your mic, by the way.
That's all right. That's all right.
Any questions? I'm hoping that this is a great resource for you to at least start your journey.
Yeah, that's outstanding. That's outstanding.
Great.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Julie. So there's going to be a lot of individual questions and things that you maybe don't want to ask in front of the whole group, like, hey, what if I have this much money? How would that work at your facility? What does yours cost? And Julie will be able to answer those questions as we go along. But also in your book, there's a place to queue up your questions. Each one of these presentations, we're not allowing Q&A right afterward, but we're going to do it after we have the presenters all present. That way you can ask them and also get together with them maybe at lunch and ask personal questions too. Like, where did you get that dress? I'm just joking. I'm joking to see if you guys are awake, because I'm not wearing a dress right now. But what I'd like to do right now, if we may, let's all stand up. Yep. All stand up. So I learned this from Tony Robbins. He's a little taller than I am, but you don't sit for more than an hour, hour and a half. You start to lose energy. So I'm going to do something. Are you guys willing to do something a little bit progressive here? Yeah? The first one is called, if somebody needs to right now, take a very quick bathroom break. That's one. Number two, though, for those who are not, I'm going to do something seems a little weird. Don't look around at other people. Nobody else is watching you. I'm going to ask you, if you can, just bounce. Just like I am. Bounce a little bit. Bounce a little bit. Keep it up. Keep it up. Look around. It is kind of funny. But keep bouncing. Keep bouncing a little bit. Now, I'm going to ask you to put your arms out to the side like this. Wiggle a little bit. Just like this. This looks even funnier. This is really good. Now, the next one, put them out in front of you, right? Just like this, right? Keep bouncing up and down. Next one, put your arm, Simon didn't say. Simon didn't, no, just kidding. Hands up, bounce a little bit more, keep going, keep going. Now stop. You feel a little bit more invigorated? I don't care, but that was fun. It's good to keep you up. If you need to take 2 or 3 minutes to run to the restroom, come back very quickly though, please. We're gonna, if you have some questions, some tough ones, come up. You can actually talk to the panelists right now. But at the 5 minutes, I want to begin the program again. We've got a couple more experts we're gonna show, then we'll have lunch. But so far, what do you guys think? Awesome, good. Fantastic. All right, we're handing out a handout for our next expert as well. And our next expert is Tom Wozniak. He's the one who's going to tell us every detail that we ever wanted to know about Medicare, Medicaid planning. He has a plethora of information. Many of you have seen him before as well if you need a Medicare supplement. He's a great agent to be able to talk, not agent, but I'm sorry, he's able to look at anything out there, and he'll often recommend things he doesn't even get paid on, which is very cool. Dave's been a wonderful resource for many of you as well. But most importantly, what we're going to rely on him for today is some of the different ideas that we're going to go around Medicare, the things that it covers, doesn't cover, and the planning around it. First thing I want to share with you, does anybody here, have you heard of Mark Cuban? Has anybody not heard of Mark Cuban? I'm not talking the sandwich. But what I want to say here is there's something that he created 1.5 years ago called costplusdrugs.com. If you haven't heard of it, you've now heard of it. What is it? He's reduced the price of drugs that are no longer on patent, so off-patent drugs, to cost plus 15%. What does that mean to me? I know I heard you say it. I heard you ask already. So this morning, anybody here suffer from some spring allergies? Yeah. So there's something you have called Claritin, right? There's a piece in that that's now can be a generic medicine as well. If you go to his website, you'll find the generic, and for 100 pills, it costs $9.60 total. If you go to Walgreens and you buy Claritin, it's $49.95. The difference? Marketing and everything that goes with what Claritin has been built for. Now, the one thing that you'll notice, and he said this, they have horrible customer service. He told us that. Why? Because he chose to keep it cost plus 15, not cost plus 35, and build a customer service department. So you have to do some of your self-service. It's only online, but it's something worth discovering. Now, why do I say that? Because to a lot of us, medications are a big part of what we end up spending money for, even on donut holes, even with copays and whatnot. So there's some really cool things that Tom's going to bring up. So let's actually have a great hand for Tom. I'm going to bring up Tom Wozniak for our next section. Please. Next expert. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. This wasn't part of the original discussion, but adding on to the prescription benefit, there are a few other options in addition to Cost Plus for saving on prescriptions, which you all know can be very expensive. Just this morning, I talked to a gentleman with Mounjaro. It's a diabetes drug. It's $1,016 a month. Ozempic, same thing. A lot of these injectable drugs are over $1,000 a month. A lot of these blood pressure pills are blood thinners. Eliquis, probably half the people in the room know what Eliquis or Xarelto are. Those are over $600 a month or close to it, retail. And so a lot of people in this room may have hit the famous donut hole with prescription drugs where you lose your copay and you pay a percentage, 25% of the cost of the drug until the end of the year typically. So a few good things are happening. First of all, in addition to Cost Plus, we have been told by clients that go see their doctors are now handing them a sheet from a company called Maple Leaf. It's a Canadian pharmacy. And so for people on these Eliquis drugs or other high-cost drugs, we never would have mentioned this before, but after the 4th time a client came in and said their doctor gave them this, then we said, okay, if doctors are telling their patients about this, we think it's something they could possibly look into. And apparently the savings is about 1/3 of the cost of some of these drugs. So what people are using is a strategy where they'll use their insurance until just before they hit this gap or donut hole, and then for the rest of the year, they'll use one of these services like Maple Leaf, or there's even a place near Southridge Mall called Global Health. It was formerly called Canada Drugs. It's been around over 20 years, and they're just north of Selfridge Mall. You can actually go to the facility or call, and they get drugs from parts in Canada and beyond. And again, about a third of the cost for some of these really expensive medications. So it could be a tremendous help, especially when people hit that gap. There's also GoodRx. Maybe you've seen the commercials for GoodRx or Single Care. Those can help in some situations and surprisingly be less than having insurance in some cases. They don't often help on those real high-ticket drug costs, though. They're more along the lines of the $70 drug becoming $12. We see that all the time. But they really don't help much like Maple Leaf, possibly Cost Plus, or Global Health when it comes to the really, really high-cost drugs. And then I'll mention this because it's very important. The Inflation Reduction Act 2022 put in some major help for prescription drug costs. Last year, insulin, most insulins are capped at $35 now. Typically, insulins run around $5.50 a month if you had to pay the retail cost. So that started last year, 2023, $35 maximum copay. Again, most insulins. The second thing the act did is it phased in a cap for the first time ever on prescription drugs. This year is the first year, and that cap is $3,300. So we have clients that are taking oral cancer medications. These drugs can run $12,000 to $15,000 a month. That's per month, so maybe $180,000 a year. Even with insurance in the past, you'd have spent $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 out of pocket. With this cap, a person taking a drug like that will pay $3,300 the first month, January, and they're done for the year. And that includes all their drugs, not just the expensive cancer drug. If they're on 4, 5, 6 other medications, those drugs all go to zero. And then the final phase of this Inflation Reduction Act, when it comes to prescriptions, is next year the cap will be, believe it or not, $2,000. So if a person has a dozen medications and some expensive ones in there, the most they're going to pay under law with their Medicare Part D plan, whether it's a standalone drug plan or whether it's with its Medicare Advantage, $2,000 would be the maximum amount that you pay. And you also have the ability to smooth out that $2,000 over the course of the year, and they call the process smoothing, where you can pay $167 a month and not have to pay the whole $2,000 all up front. So that's all the good news coming with people that have prescription drugs, especially the high-cost medications. And I'll be around later today for lunch and after for questions on that, or what I came to really talk about, which is Medicare and long-term care and lack of coverage, basically. So for people here on Medicare, whether they have original Medicare and a supplement or a Medicare Advantage, you've maybe found out that Medicare does do a pretty fantastic job of covering hospitalizations and outpatient services. We've had clients, we've had 2 recently for long hospital stays. One 18 days with an appendix that went bad, sepsis, intensive care, almost passed away, lost 39 pounds in the hospital. The bill was almost $500,000. In between Medicare and the supplement, zero. No bill. Because Medicare paid the whole bill except the Part A hospital deductible this year, and that's $1,632. And their supplement took care of the rest of it. So out of that huge bill, he called and says, you know what? I never got a bill. Even with the Medicare Advantage, 18 days in the hospital, you'd pay about $300 a day, usually for 5 or 6 days, and that's it. So again, out of a $500,000 bill, you're paying $1,800. Not bad. And those plans usually have a cap of about $4,000 anyway, if you have a really bad year. So Medicare does a pretty outstanding job with hospital. And if it's outpatient, somebody's dealing with cancer and getting chemo, radiation, somebody that has kidney failure, they're getting dialysis 3 times a week, the costs are getting up there. They pay, if they have a deductible of $240, after that, you pay nothing. Medicare pays 80%, the supplement pays 20%. And you can see bills that are six figures and either have no bill, or if you're born after 1955, you got a $240 deductible. So outstanding coverage again, but when it comes to nursing home care, that's where there's a serious shortage in care. Very little coverage when it comes to nursing care. As you'll see on your sheet, the only type of care that's covered with Medicare is short-term skilled care. And that's also known better as rehab care. So somebody who has maybe a hip or knee replacement or a stroke or a bad fall, they may be in the hospital for a while. They get out of the hospital and you might go right to the facility for that rehab care. That's covered. But the key is you have to be making progress. And many of you have seen this with a family member, maybe had it yourself. My dad's had 2 separate stays in a hospital followed by rehab care. And both times he was there 21 days. And so it was covered, except for that last day. The first 20 days, Medicare pays 100%, original Medicare. And most Advantage plans, same thing. They'll pay the first 20 days. But again, you have to be showing progress. The most you can get covered is 100 days, a little over 3 months. And the vast majority of people never see that come to fruition. They never get the full 100 days because they stop showing progress. And guess what? Medicare stops paying at that point. And so do any and all Medicare supplements, any and all Medicare Advantage plans will stop paying if the person's not improving any longer. So the person has the option to stay in the facility and pay privately, which can be around maybe $350 a day, or they go back home. Medicare cannot afford to pay long-term care. Somebody in the facility due to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Lou Gehrig's, crippling arthritis, conditions where they're declining, not improving, that's custodial care, where a person needs supervisory care. They need help with bathing, dressing, feeding, toileting, transferring. That can be done by somebody that's not a skilled care worker, not a registered nurse, LPN. And that kind of custodial care is what most long-term care is, and it's not covered by Medicare. So when I give a presentation on somebody turning 65, for example, we talk about how good the hospital coverage is and the outpatient services, but the lack of care or coverage for nursing care. For some people, they already knew about it, and some it's totally brand new information. So we want to let people know that Medicare cannot be relied on for any long-term care coverage. Then you have Medicaid, which is a combination of state and federal services for people that can get long-term care, but you have to have very little assets or income to qualify. So I called the state Medicaid office in Madison to get the figures for 2024. And basically, if it's a married couple, you're allowed to keep 50% of your assets up to, this is an exact number, $154,140. That's it. That's not a lot. So if a person had 50% of their assets were $300,000, they'd have to spend that down to qualify for Medicaid for that person that's in the facility. And if a person's assets or a couple's assets are under $50,000, they get to keep 100% of that in a home and a car. Once it's down to one person, when one spouse passes away, it drops like a rock and you get to keep $2,000. That's the asset limit. And you can see the income limit is also very low. So yes, people do get coverage in facilities under Medicaid, but they have to be spending down assets most of the time. And applying for Medicaid is a challenge. It's an arduous process. and then they reevaluate. They also do estate recoveries in Wisconsin. So if monies were paid for a person's care and then the person passed away, they can actually put a lien on the home, and the state can actually be paid back first before money goes to the next generation, to heirs. So it's good to know these things when before a person needs to plan for long-term care. The suggestion that I got when I talked to the state Medicaid office is people should talk to an estate planning attorney. And there are certain things you can do. You can't do everything, but this would be something that you have to try to minimize things, and to have a plan in place would be a significant help. And it's good practice to be prepared if something does happen, because you don't want to panic when somebody has that stroke and start planning at that point. So we can talk about these things. I would say definitely consult with an estate planning attorney and have affairs in order, just in the event something happens, because there's no crystal ball. You never know when something can occur. But otherwise, then you'll be more prepared for the high cost of long-term care. But again, the bottom line is not to rely on Medicare for sure, and Medicaid. It's probably something you don't want to necessarily end up being on, because another thing with Medicaid is you don't always have your freedom of choice of facility. When you're taking a parent for an interview at a facility, I did take my dad to a place in Greendale, and they wanted ability to pay privately at least 3 years. And so he had that ability, so he was accepted into the facility. He has a long-term care policy, it's paying for it, but they do want to know that they're going to be paying, they're going to be paid for their stay there. Very important, because long-term care facilities these days, assisted living, we're talking about $6,000 a month. And if it's memory care, it could be double, $12,000, maybe $14,000 a month, depending on the facility. So all important things to talk about. I can answer questions on Medicare Part D, the supplements, advantage plans, nursing care, all those things, and I'd be around all afternoon if need be. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I know one of the popular strategies has also been for people to give assets away to try to qualify for Medicaid. Medicaid is essentially making yourself poor. So let's say I had $10 million and I know I'm going to go into a long-term care facility. Just give it all to my kids, right? That's what people used to do years ago. And then guess what happened? The state said, oh, anything you've given away over the last 2 years, we're going to claw back. So they're going to go find your children. The money you gave them, if they spent it on a race car, sorry, they're going to put a lien on you. Another one, a client had this as well. Now, what the look-back period is 7 years right now, right? It's 5 years, 5 years going, and they're talking about going to infinity. They're talking about saying it's a lifetime. Saying if you're worth $100 million and you give it away and you're smart enough to do it 5 years before you go into a facility, they should be able to find it. Now, this is, I'm just telling you what the state is. It's nothing, harsh. It's just a truism, so be prepared for that. The interesting part is we had a client who's given away $20,000 a year to each of their 5 kids. 4 of the kids saved money. The other one remodeled their house. So if that clawback comes back, where's the money coming from? You're actually putting kids into really deep issues with the state if they spend the money that you gave that they claw back. Be careful with that. So it's called Medicaid planning. Be very careful. Yes?
Is this a decision that would be made by the state legislature, and then should we contact our individual state senator to find out, do they vote on it?
Good question.
Who makes this decision that they can?
The question is, who makes the decision on the clawback? Is it the state legislature or is it the person sitting next to you? I'm just joking. I said that to say. I'm not actually certain on it. I think it's the state. Is that? Go ahead, Dave.
It's a federal law that the states have to do that. So for the state to receive funds from the federal government, they have to claw that back according to federal guidelines.
Yeah, so it's a really cool program, it's a federal state program. That makes sense? Yeah, it's kind of like the post office is a federal agency, but it's private. Okay, Okay, how did that work in the mortgage-backed securities industry? At any rate, so there'll be some great questions, the really, really, really tough ones. We're going to have both Dave and, because they actually referred back and forth to each other here, so you'll see the estate planner as well as our wonderful Medicaid planner in here as well, Medicare planner, I should say. So what I want to do at this point is bring up our attorney. So there's legal questions that you have, really, really tough ones. Maybe save that for personal times. No, he can answer any of them. Dave Watson is a great resource for us as well when it comes to this idea of planning, estate planning around the ideas we're talking of as well. Again, our intent is just to begin to give you some feeder questions and ideas, not to be comprehensive. That would take more than 15 minutes. It'd take like 17 minutes or so. But we're giving everybody a little bit of time right now to at least start your thought process. So let's bring up Dave Watson. Thank you, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
As Ken told me, save your questions when the billable clock is on.
Ken.
But thank you. So, what can an estate planner help with? So when you come to see an estate planner, first and foremost, they help you put together a set of legal documents to make sure that your assets pass exactly as intended, but it's much more than that. It's making sure that we have ongoing protections for your loved ones, ongoing protections for your children. It's making sure that you can donate to your favorite charities, donate to your favorite organizations, and then we tailor every plan to your unique circumstances. As no one's situation is cookie cutter. A lot of second marriages and family complexities that we want to plan for. It's also making sure that while you're alive is that, if you were becoming incapacitated, making sure that someone can make healthcare and financial decisions on your behalf. And it's also making sure that we pass upon the values that you have now to make sure that your beneficiaries, understand, these are my values and this is what I wish to impart upon you. And we do that with a specific set of documents. And again, these are a little bit different according to your circumstances, but we have a will, and with a will, we assign a personal representative, and this makes sure that assets, again, pass according to your wishes. And we also have a tool that I recommend to most of my clients, and that's called a revocable trust, and this is usually complementary to a will. And with the revocable trust, we assign assets to it while you're living, so it's kind of a fictional entity while you're living. And then when you pass away or become incapacitated, we assign a successor trustee who then can distribute those assets without probate. So when you usually just have a will in place, unless we're really up to date on our beneficiary designations, it can sometimes have to pass through the probate process, and this is very costly. So with the trust in place, it's the number one tool we use to make sure everything passes without probate to our beneficiaries. We also have what's called a healthcare and financial power of attorney, and this is where we ensure that we assign an agent. So if you were to become incapacitated, someone can step in and make those healthcare and financial decisions on our behalf. We also have HIPAA authorizations to make sure our designated agent could access our medical records if need be. And then we also usually include what's called a living will. So this is an instruction to your agent that if you were ever in a terminal condition or persistent vegetative state, that your agent knows, you want them to do everything, doctors, everything they can to keep you alive, or again, instructions, hey, just let me go if I'm ever in that situation. So those are important documents to have in place when we create an estate plan. Specifically to this presentation, how moving and selling and how downsizing or entering retirement years, there are several important estate planning considerations. First and foremost, if you have a trust or a will or an estate plan in place, is to review those documents. Perhaps you made those documents when you were younger. made sure that we had guardianship provisions for our young children, but now we want to make sure we have proper, that those beneficiary designations or agents that we named are still up to date and relevant to our current situation. Also, if we've done a plan in the past, that you may have just had a will or something more simplistic, that you may consider a revocable living trust, which I touched upon before. And again, a revocable living trust can help avoid probate and provide for easier management of your assets, provides for flexibility and privacy, unlike just a will that may have to go through probate. A trust is private and avoids the court process. Moreover, it provides for ongoing protections for your children, such as divorce protection. So we can ensure in a revocable trust that your children, that when assets pass to them, it's ensured that it's always their individual property. We can also ensure ongoing creditor protection for your children. So once they inherit assets, if they were ever sued later in life, that a creditor can't access those assets. It's also important in these years to update beneficiary designations, just to make sure, if you have a plan in place, that they coalesce with that plan, or that the named beneficiaries are those still the same beneficiaries that you want now that you named in the past. I know a lot of clients that I've deal with in their later years, perhaps they've named, their parents as their beneficiaries, but now that doesn't make sense. Their children are older. We want to make sure that, they're named beneficiaries, or if we have an estate plan in place, that our trust is named as that beneficiary. As Tom mentioned, we want to plan for long-term care. You evaluate some of your options for long-term care, such as long-term care insurance, annuities, and setting aside some funds for potential long-term care needs. And this can help protect your assets and ensure you receive the care you need without depleting your estate, so you have more assets to pass on to your beneficiaries. We may consider simplifying asset ownership. So I had a lot of clients that come to me and they have assets perhaps at different institutions. And so I encourage them to kind of simplify, put all their assets under the umbrella of Gentian. And this...
That was unsolicited.
This doesn't mean that we're not diversifying. It means that we're simplifying, just so your beneficiaries, know where to find your assets.
It's not a tacit
in the
endorsement,
future.
but I don't mind. No. Thank you.
Perhaps we want to review life insurance needs. Reevaluate your life insurance coverage and needs. I have a lot of clients that come to me and say, do I still need to carry this policy, whether it be a whole life policy or term policy? But often I encourage my clients to review those policies to make sure that we can perhaps add what's called a long-term care rider. A lot of people, at retirement age, long-term care insurance becomes cost prohibitive. So you may want to look at perhaps adding a long-term care insurance rider to your insurance policy. And this will ensure that if you ever had to go into a long-term care facility, that you had access to assets or access to funds without depleting your assets. And then consider, depending on your situation, some asset protection strategies. These sometimes are more sophisticated with irrevocable trusts to protect your assets from potential creditors and lawsuits. And then to stay organized and communicate. Keep your documents now, especially your estate planning documents, in places where your beneficiaries can find them, that they're easily accessible, and consider having those conversations with your children too. Just say, hey, this is my estate plan. This is what I plan on doing, and this can kind of alleviate some problems in the future. Also, at this juncture, we may consider some legacy and gifting options. So if you have a favorite organization, favorite charity, there are other options to consider rather than just, straight up donating to those charities or organizations. One such mechanism we have in estate planning is through charitable trusts. And this will allow you to leave assets to charitable organizations and while providing tax benefits and income during your lifetime. These are often through what's called charitable remainder trusts or charitable lead trusts. We also have donor-advised funds where you can contribute cash or other assets to a donor-advised fund where it distributes the funds to chosen charities over time. And this, again, would provide you with some tax benefits during your lifetime. And then we may consider, depending on your asset level. And so currently, just to kind of step back, the federal exemption, and that's how much you can pass on to your beneficiaries without incurring a federal estate tax, is about at $13.6 million. As a couple, it's $27 million. And I know when you work with Gentian, I think they guarantee that you'll be over the exemption.
If you live long enough.
Okay, if you live long enough. Okay, I got that wrong. And there are some strategies we can employ to make sure that, you don't get taxed upon your passing, because anything over that amount, so say you're single and the estate tax exemption is still at $13.6 million, anything over that you get taxed at 40%. So it's quite steep. And some strategies we can employ is what's called a grant or retained annuity trust. These trusts allow you to transfer assets to your beneficiaries while retaining annuity stream for a period of time. We do limited liability or limited liability partnerships where we can kind of transfer some assets to our beneficiaries and to our children, or gift if you do have, businesses or entities, and then get discounted valuations just to lower our estate's value. And we also have life insurance trusts. So if you have either a whole life policy or a term policy, those after death or those death values are considered part of your estate. And there are some mechanisms we can employ to get those out of your estate while you're living. So again, we don't have to worry about incurring a federal estate tax. So just kind of a brief level overview. I will get to questions, I believe, after lunch. But thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. So some of the great things about that as well is the structure of what you want to do is very much your intention. So beginning to think of your intention of how you want to give and who you want to give to. There's typically 4 recipients we talk about. 1 might be family, 2 might be charity, 3 is long-term care facilities, and 4 is the federal government. They're all willing to help out and take their part, right? So let me give you a little bit actually, I want to tell you a little story, because we mentioned about longevity here and divorce. You might think, heck, we've been married for 52 years, whatever. So I went to a client's house just recently, 94 years old, 95 years old, and unfortunately their oldest child had passed away. There was their last one. And he said, hey, Chris, I just want to let you know, we're getting divorced. What? You've been married for 70 years. What's going on? He said, Chris, we wanted to wait till our last children died. You know how you're always waiting for the last child? No, I'm joking. This is one of my friends, Tom, actually had this situation. So my friend Tom did years ago, and I thought, that's crazy, so I had to tell the story. Coming back to a couple of things here, though. I want to go back to the living will. So when you're looking at a will, my wife and I have done an ethical will as well. It's an addendum, it's an add-on, it's not required, but it's something you might want to do. In the ethical will, and I think we've talked about this as well, Dave, it's explaining why we've done what we've done. Ours presently is 19 pages because our kids are old enough that if we had somebody else take care of them, we want to tell them why we've done what we've done, what our intentions are for the future with them as well. So somebody gets a document that's very long that tells, and it's not to persuade somebody what they should do, but it's to help them understand our thoughts and guidance. So it's something you may want to include in yours as well, to be intentional about what it is you've done. It's called an ethical will. It's an addendum. It can be put in your official documents and can be read with your will as well. It's your voice. For those who are in the future, you can get an avatar to ask you questions, and they can have an avatar which will tell them exactly, hey, I don't want you to buy that sports car. Inherited money is spent in different ways, I'll tell you that much. But how did the program so far? What do you guys think? Good? Is it worthwhile? Excellent. So let me give you a little bit of run of the program from here. So they're setting up lunch right now. What we're going to do is we got 45 minutes for lunch. It's our help ourselves lunch over here. So feel free to talk around the table. We're going to remain available as well. And then what we're going to do is we come back. We're going to talk, in this case, at about, make sure I got my timing right. Lisa, we're going to have you at about 12:45. And then we're going to have a client panel. People who've been in this situation who can answer questions or tell you about their situation they're going through, kind of like Gail. But people who have this real world experience where it's not just for them, it may be for relatives as well. Because there's been some interesting scenarios that we've gone through. And then what we'll do is about 1:30 we'll do a wrap up. I've got 2 slides apparently to do that with. They're giving me a limit here. And also then at 2 p.m. we're going to have round tables for personal conversations. So we'll have a round table that you can sit at with one of the experts if it's too big. What we'll do is we'll also maybe combine 2 tables, or we'll have 2 different sessions with them. Another important function, at noon, 12 o'clock precisely, we're going to have you sign up. See Jenny waving in the back over there? If you'd like to do a tour tomorrow, there are limited spaces available. They don't like to have more than 6 people. It means a couple is 2, right? That's 2 of the 6. So actually head back to the table when you can to looking at the facilities you may want to tour. One's at 10, and then there's one at 1. You can do both. But I just want to make sure that you know, going to see the facility you're thinking of is an important thing to see. Whether you're just curious, you can obviously do it at another time as well, but we wanted to facilitate a few of those times for you as well. So that'll be the run of the program. And at this point, I will have, are we almost ready for lunch? Yes. Okay, I don't want, okay, wait. Now, when the most emphatic answer is, are we ready for lunch, that I've heard, I haven't asked that question with, yeah, okay, you ready for lunch? Yes! I appreciate that. That is true honesty. That is spoken from the visceral, guttural need of yes. So with that, we're going to take a break here. Thank you so far for your attention. We look forward to this afternoon session, and happy eating. I think we'll set up in the corner here. Awesome. I can't lie. Actually, I was telling a story. I gave 1/3 of my clothes away last year, 1/3 of everything I have. I just gave them away thinking, oh, I'm going to miss some of this. I'm ready to give half of the stuff I still have left away. It's just one of those things, right? There's some clarity that comes with it. Mark Zuckerberg, when he wakes up in the morning, has 0 decisions to make. You know why? He wears the exact same thing every day. Steve Jobs wore that black turtleneck for a super long time and apparently didn't wash, but that's a different story. But as we look at this, you know, the stuff we have is attached. I talked about experience dividends. We're also talking about different values of things. You may have a very deep sentimental value in something, but to somebody else, it's just a thing. So we're going to address some of these different ideas and subjects as we go through. And so far, I think the panel has been absolutely wonderful. And I think our experts give you different views. Again, remember, this is not to be a deep rabbit hole. It's to begin the discussion in your own head. And that may continue with ruminations. But I think so far, I probably have 100 different things I've written down just from the conversation so far today and the questions you brought up. So feel free, as we get through here, if you've been scribbling down questions, we're going to have tables over here where we have experts. We're also going to have a client panel as well. So these are meant to be advocates for you, a resource for you. That's what we're here for. So with that, I want to make sure that we're all willing to speak up, because if you don't, I'm going to ask all the questions. You've seen me do it, right? Good. So, well, anyway, with that, let me give an introduction as well, if I can find glasses. I don't need them. Let's go here. We're going to bring Lisa Hayes up. She's with A Bridge Forward, and she is a senior move specialist. She has some incredible stories. You can hold the microphone, or would you rather have it in the...
I will hold the microphone.
Perfecto. So she's going to walk around amongst all of us. But I want to bring Lisa up. Let's give her a big hand for coming in today. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. I'm actually going to stand behind the podium because I have 15 minutes, and this is a topic that I can talk about for 2 hours. So my notes will help me stay on track. The thought of moving strikes fear in the hearts of even the most stalwart individuals, especially those who have not moved in 30 or 40 years. Anyone here love to move? Yeah. No. So maybe we can talk later. I own and manage a senior move management company, and we've helped hundreds of clients through the overwhelming, often emotional, and very stress-inducing process of moving. When I meet with a prospective client, he or she inevitably says, I have no idea where to start. And that's where senior move managers can help. So it's an industry. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. We're one of many companies in this area who help clients move. But I'm going to spend a few minutes today talking about some of the things that we think about when we help clients, and hopefully give you some ideas of some things, whether you're thinking about moving now or in the future, that you might be able to do now to help yourself prepare for a move in the future. And it's interesting because I know early on, Chris asked who plans to stay on their home for the rest of their lives. Many of you raised your hand, so you might not be thinking about moving, but sometimes the time comes, or oftentimes there's a family member or friend who may need help moving as well. So one of the things when we have a client who's thinking about moving, we sit down with them and we create a written plan and a timeline, because you know what? This is really hard and emotional work, and most people can't do it until they have a deadline. So we will work with them and figure out a moving date, whether that moving date is in 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years. And then we create and build a plan around that and consider all of the things that need to happen in order to help that client be ready to move whenever that move date comes. Here's the big question, the elephant in the room: where does all this stuff go? There's really only 4 areas. You can move it, you can donate it, you can sell it, or you can dispose of it. So when you kind of narrow it down to those 4 things, it helps to begin to give you clarity until how you're going to go through the process. So the first thing, when we work with clients, we determine what we're going to move. And that oftentimes requires taking measurements of the new home, condo, apartment, measuring the furniture, creating a floor plan, deciding what will fit, what doesn't fit. But it's really important to identify what you want to move. And sometimes there's tough decisions that have to be made. And what we really focus on is, let's find those things that you love the most. Now is the time to let go of your great aunt's side table. You never really liked it anyway. So there's no reason to take it on to your next home. So you want to make sure everything fits. You want to take only the things that you love. And you want to make sure, if you can, that you're taking pieces of furniture that have multiple uses, because you're likely moving into a smaller space. So if you're trying to decide what you're going to put the TV on, if you can put it on a chest rather than a table, it's going to give you some drawers for some extra storage in your new space. So number 1, what are we going to take with us? Number 2, what are we going to sell? This is oftentimes the hardest conversation I have with most clients, because furniture and belongings on the secondhand market aren't getting very much money these days, if you can even find someone to take them. So there are opportunities to sell things. You can have an estate sale. You can send things to consignment. If the consignment stores accept them, you can work with an auctioneer. You can sell, if you're talented and you have the desire to do it, you can sell things online through Facebook Marketplace. But it all takes work and effort and planning. And there's one really great advantage of working with a senior move manager is that they can often provide pretty good guidance in terms of what the best opportunities are for the sale of furniture and other collectibles in your home if they have them. So it's a process. It takes time. And certainly if you have collectibles, if you have fine art, there are opportunities, but you have to work it. And there is a network in this community. There's a network in this state for the resale of some things. But again, most people find that their stuff is not worth as much money as they thought it was going to be, even antiques. So we're going to sell what we can, and then we're going to donate. And there are lots of organizations in this community that will accept donations of household items and good quality used furniture. But again, there's a network and there's a process. You have to understand what they'll take, what they won't take. And if you would like to have them come and pick some things up from your house, you have to plan ahead and work with them on picking up. So our goal always is, throughout these first 3 parts of the process, move, sell, donate, it's to try to get as much stuff to new homes as we possibly can. Because the 4th option is the least desirable, and that's disposal. And that's when the truck comes and picks up the rest of the stuff. And everyone that we move has a 20-year-old treadmill in their basement that has to go to landfill. There is no exception. So, but my one piece of advice to you today, if you don't remember anything else from what I say, is that if you're thinking about moving, in a year, 2 years, 5 years. Today, start to fill up your trash and recycling bins every single week. Start to break down the Amazon cardboard in your attic. Go through the papers, fill up those bins, because most people are really surprised it's expensive to get rid of trash at the end. So my one piece of advice, remember that. So if you are thinking, gosh, I want to start to right size in my house, whether I'm going to move or I just want to, kind of get going, I want a little more space, I want to feel a little bit more liberated in my space, here are a few tips on how you might get started. First of all, have some boxes and packing supplies ready before you begin. Commit to a small amount of time each day or each week. You will be much more productive if you say, I'm going to spend an hour and clean out 4 drawers today, than you are if you say, gosh, today I'm going to clean out the kitchen, because you know what's going to happen? Probably the kitchen's not going to be done at the end of the day. In fact, it's probably not going to be started. It's our recommendation, and we have the most success when we focus on one room at a time. So I know when I work at my house and I think I'm going to downsize something, I start in one room, I go to take something to another room, and then I get distracted and start to look at stuff over there. And pretty soon I really haven't accomplished much. So having a laser beam focus on one room, and this is what we do in clients' homes. And sometimes in clients' homes, we might even be a little overwhelmed with how much there is to do, and my team will kind of look at me like, oh, what do we do? We say, focus on one room at a time. And you know what? Before you know it, that room is done, and you have this sort of emotional freedom to go on to the next room. I guarantee that. If you are packing up things for donation, clothing, household items, put them in some bags and take them out to your car right away. Because you know what that prevents? Yeah, it prevents you from going through the stuff again and deciding to take things out that you already put in the bag. So when we work with clients, anything that we prep for donation, it goes when we go that day. It doesn't stay in the house overnight. So, so you don't have time to rethink it. And also, again, it gives you this emotional freedom, and you feel better. You've created new space, and it gives you momentum to keep moving forward because you can see the progress. So one of the other recommendations is, if you're having trouble getting started, start in a room of the home that you use less often. Because oftentimes there are things in there that you really haven't used in a long time, and likely things that you have less emotional attachment to. So that's sometimes a good way to kind of get you started in the right direction. And then my last piece of advice on this is give yourself plenty of time. Right sizing is a process, and it is not easy for one single person that we work with. And when we work with clients and we're working on right sizing, we never work more than 4 hours in a home. And sometimes that's stretching it, because even though we're doing all the physical work, the client's sitting telling us what to do, but the emotional toll on making decisions is much harder than you think until you're really going through the process. So give yourself plenty of time. It is a process. Sometimes you might go through a room once and think you've done a pretty good job, and then a month later you go back and think, gosh, there's more things here that I'm ready to let go of. So my recommendations on 4 areas, if you're not really ready to move, but you want to get going on a few things in the house, here are my recommendations on some places that are really beneficial to start early. 1, photos and memorabilia. We all have photos and memorabilia in many drawers and cabinets and boxes throughout the house. So spend a weekend, gather all that stuff up, get it into one place, and start to go through it. Throw away the bad pictures. Throw away the pictures of people that you don't know any longer or don't like. I, a couple years ago, threw away all the pictures in our house from the 80s because they were all so awful. And I never wanted my kids or anyone after we were gone to see them. So really scale it back. Once you get it down to a couple boxes worth of stuff, go on Amazon, order some acid-free boxes to store it in, and you know what? You're good to go. There are also great services locally and nationally of companies that digitize photos and memorabilia. So if you're really ambitious and want to create digital photo estates for your family members, it's a wonderful gift and something to do when you have the time and the energy to do it. So that's number 1, photos. Number 2 is paperwork. Most people have 10 times, maybe 100 times more paperwork in their home than they need, and now's the time to start to go through it. Consult your financial advisor or your accountant on what you need to keep and what you need to what you can get rid of. Get some Sendix paper bags, write shred on one of the bags, write recycle on the other ones, and just start putting the papers in there. And you know what? Again, before you know it, that 4-drawer filing cabinet is going to be down to 1 drawer. Okay. So the other thing is that I mentioned is collectibles. If you have collectibles that you might want to resell, it's time to start early to research what they have, whether they have value, and how you want to deal with them if you're not going to move them. So if you think you want to sell them, if you want to donate them, whatever, that takes some time and some effort. Number 4, early on, are things left in your home by your children. So now's the time to ask them if they want the bins of paperwork, school papers from grade school. If they don't, out they go. So we all have stuff in our house that our kids have left us for us to deal with. So, all right. So I'm running short on time. I'm going to give you 6 more tips, insider tips. If you're thinking about downsizing, if you're thinking about prepping to move, one is get yourself a big stock of colored sticky dots, Post-it notes, or painter's tape. Those are fabulous for marking the things in your house. This is what I'm going to move. This is what I'm going to donate. This is what I'm going to sell. You don't have to rethink the decision every time you walk in the room because you can see it right there. Make use of large outdoor trash bags and paper grocery bags for taking things to donation. They're easier to carry. They're lighter. You can put more in your car. You can get a lot of books in a 2 Sendix grocery bags if you're taking them to donation. If you're going to move and you have some things you're going to store, think about investing in some clear plastic bins. They make it much easier to know what you have and access what you have at a point where maybe you're putting some things in a storage room in a community or an apartment building. Use up the Costco closet and think about maybe not reinvesting in it anytime in the near future. Local libraries take many used books in good condition, so now's the time to start sharing those good used books with other people who might enjoy them. And then the 6th insider tip is many electronics are banned from Wisconsin landfill. So you have to figure out special ways to get rid of the old TVs and DVD players or monitors, etc. If you are really motivated, in 2 weeks on May 4th from 8 to noon, the Ozaukee County Clean Sweep is happening at their Hilltop Drive location in Cedarburg, and you can take some electronics there. So if you're motivated after today, go see the electronics recycling people there. If you need help, again, senior move management is an industry. We have an association. It's called the National Association of Senior Move Managers. The web address is nasmm.org. It has a lot of good information about moving. You can also put your zip code in, and it will show you all the senior move managers within a 20-mile radius or whatever who are members of the association. So there's lots of help out there. And I really encourage you, if you're thinking about help, to look at that website. I highly recommend that you consider a company that's part of the organization. As part of the organization, we agree to abide by their ethics and insurance standards. And we all run our businesses as businesses. So, there's some people who do this on the side. That may be good for some people. But again, we think it's important that the people working at home are insured, bonded, and follow a certain code of ethics. Senior move managers as industry usually will provide a complimentary consultation. They'll create a customized plan and schedule for you. They will create a new space plan and floor plan for your furniture. They help in the right sizing and clearing out process. They coordinate move logistics and will recommend a moving company. We pack, we supervise on moving day, we unpack, organize, and we also provide you with vetted resources that you may need along the way. So we all work in a every company has its own personality, and if you're thinking about using a senior move management company, you should talk to a couple because it's really important. There's a lot of trust involved. We're working in your homes, we're working with your things. So it's important to find the organization that feels like it's the right alignment with your move and what you want to accomplish. But there are a lot of really great people out there who do this. And all of them that I know are really wonderful people. And they do that because they have helping personalities and they love to see clients move successfully to their new home. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Before I call somebody up from the audience, I'm just going to have speak at random. I've got a couple issues. You might have met my wife, Deb, a few months ago, because I swear that picture of JFK with the gold trim around it that I really wanted to keep, it's gone. I think she might have redonated it to where I bought it from, which is quite funny. I thought that hit home. So one story. It was a perfect white elephant gift that just keeps on giving. I could have kept. But one as well. So my grandma. So we cleaned out. I told you about my grandfather and grandmother. So when we cleaned out their home, I don't know that she realized that you don't need 400 Cool Whip containers. Hold on, with the lids. Especially if you become a Tupperware dealer. So when we did, we're like in the back corner of this thing, like underneath, like, my goodness, there must be 700 of these things. Anyway, it was pretty interesting as we went away. So I did think that was funny. Another one I have is I had a client walk in, and her dad, had left her a coin. And she goes, this coin, she came in, hey, to our meeting. Well, Chris, I've got this. What's it worth? I mean, it says $1 on it. Is it worth like $1 or $1.50? That's a gold doubloon. It's worth $1,400 at the time. She goes, oh my gosh. She just almost fell over. Goes, I got 30 of these in my car. So I go, is it locked? No. So she ran right back out. It was the funniest thing, but I kid you not, I got stories like that would, I got another guy who says, I don't pay taxes, I get a refund. Yeah. I should write a book on that kind of stuff, right? It's super funny. And by the way, the Costco thing that hit right at home, I didn't know that I needed 50 pounds of raisins last week. But it was such a good deal. But then I bring them home and they're not organic, so my wife wouldn't let me have them. No, I'm joking. I'm just joking. But what I'd like to do, so a lot of people haven't sold a home in the last 30 years. So we actually have another resource I'm going to bring up for a minute and just talk about what has changed maybe in the past 30 years. We have a senior move specialist in the back, and I'm actually going to call on her. Amy, why don't you come up just and give us a quick rundown. What is it like selling a home today? What's changed? What's new? Because it's not just pictures where you visit a home now. People actually buy a home without ever seeing it in person sometimes.
Or they buy one within the first time they saw it, like 5 minutes later.
Yes, exactly. I don't know who that is.
I don't know who that is either.
I'm not sure who that is.
Hi, I'm Amy Becker. I'm with First Flower Real Estate here in Mephwan. Who's bought a home or sold a home recently? Anyone? Okay. Couple people. Okay, right there. Well, we know that.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so it used to be years ago, you would buy a home and every year you would work on a little project, right? You do a little something this year, a little something the next year. Now, do you know what? Now people want to move into their home and they want to order pizza that night or go out for pizza and never do anything to their home. So what do they expect? They expect a house that's move-in ready. You're thinking, how do I do that? I still like having floral wallpaper and balances on my windows. Well, here's the thing. I can't always channel my inner 30-year-old, although I like to think that I'm still 30.
Sure, we all
I'm
are.
not. But the person who's going to buy your house is probably going to be 30 years old. Their taste isn't going to be the same as yours. So what we need to do is we need to partner with senior move experts to get your stuff out of the house, not trying to be offensive, I'm sure it's lovely, but we want to get your stuff out of the house, and then we want to stage it. We want to do a pre-listing inspection so we know if there are any issues with the home, and we want to get our arms around those issues. The benefit is that I know people who can come and take care of all the stuff that might be wrong with your house. And we want to do it before you move out because the buyer is going to think that it costs 3 times more to fix it than it really does. So we want to partner with Julie to get Lisa to get the stuff out of the house. We want to inspect it and then we want to stage it. Because now when people buy homes, they look at them online. Okay, so they're looking at a house online and they're determining whether or not they even want to step foot inside that house. We want it ready. We want it to look like somebody who's 30 is going to move right in and go out for dinner that night. So that's why you focus on where you're headed next and you focus on bringing the stuff with you that you want to have and that will fit in your new place. I focus, or a realtor focuses on what's left in the house and what needs to be done to get as good of a price as possible. And even though interest rates are higher than they were over the past couple of years, when you guys bought your first homes, did anyone pay 7% or was the interest rate much higher than that? much, much higher. So keep it in perspective, interest rates are still very low, and there are still life events that cause people to need to move out of a home and into a home. So supply and demand, there's very little inventory, and the value of your home is probably worth way more than you can imagine.
That's awesome.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Amy.
Appreciate that. I thought that'd be a good segment to talk about as well. So I want to kind of digress because that's what I do. I think my middle name is digress, but it's Lee, actually, if you want to know. My middle name's Lee. So you all got one of these. You know what this is? This is a magic wand. So I don't encourage you to eat it and ingest it because it no longer works. So that was a test. It's like Willy Wonka. Those who still have, right? This is designed for when you have a major problem. You simply hold it out and you say, Alakazam, and you do a couple of funny things. You record it so we can get it on social media. You go, please go away, and then see what happens.
Why do you wave that over me?
Deb asked why I waved that over her. That was not meant to be waved at anyone in particular. There's a disclosure on this as well. So, yeah, exactly. So what I want to do now is I want to bring up a client panel, people who've been through this experience with us. We're going to pass the microphone around so we can hear. But if I might just take a couple moments for those who are on the client panel to come on up, and I'll introduce you as well. Fabulous, thank you. Another, no, right here. Come on, all three here. So what we're going to do is talk about a couple of scenarios that we've been through together. So David Krill has been a lifelong friend of us. When we first came here years ago, my wife and I did. They really became second family to us, similar to Byron and Cindy Lumen. Has anybody here ever heard of Zach DeBoer? You heard of Zach DeBoer? So the introduction to Zach was very fortunately came from the Lumens as well. So we can give him a big round of applause for that. So, but I want to say yes. So a couple of different things we're going to talk about here is scenarios. I'm just going to let them share scenarios they've been through with either their own decision or making a decision for someone else. We've got two incredible scenarios here. David was in commercial real estate for a super long time, so he gets a lot of the questions and understands commercial real estate and his own real estate very well. And then you're going to find Byron and Cindy over here have been phenomenal at helping other people in the family make some of these decisions as well. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to give a whole lot more introduction, but they're both wonderful. Feel free to ask them questions, but I'm going to let you guys just first start out. And if you were on the initial webinar for this, the initial kind of fact-finding webinar, David was at St. Camilla. He's the one who talked about his place and gave us a bunch of data right away, so super helpful as well. So maybe I'll start, Dave, with yourself. Okay? Sure. Yeah.
Well, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to take just a minute to thank Gentian and staff for providing this kind of information. It's absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
And these are the kinds of things that you folks and me have gone through and are talking about, and it's very, very helpful. And Lisa, that was really helpful. I've gone through the downsizing thing 3 times and had help doing it, which was very valuable. Oh, yeah. So my story is simple. I moved into St. Camillus 2 years ago, exactly 2 years ago this week. And I moved, I had a large home on Lake Michigan for 25 years, and my wife passed away. And I moved, so I downsized from a big home on Lake Michigan, then I downsized from that big home into a condominium in Port Washington called Harbor Lights. And then from Harbor Lights, I moved back to Wauwatosa to St. Camillus. And it was an absolutely perfect decision for me. I'm single. And my mom was at St. Camillus for 12 years. And so I knew the property, I knew the location, and I knew the value of the experience very well. So at St. Camillus, there's an older building built in 1986, and then a brand new building that I'm in that's almost fully spoken for, but it's a total of about 600 apartments, and in independent living, but it is the continued care contract where if anything happens to me or my health, I'm guaranteed a place to live for the rest of my life. My children live in Colorado and Missouri, so they are very comfortable with me living in Wauwatosa and having the type of care and community that I have there. One of the things that I find very, very helpful is the socialization that is provided by an independent living or senior community. This is a 19-page brochure just for April 2024 independent living activities. It's incredible. Movies, presentations, a full gymnasium and wellness program, a spa. The amenities are just overwhelming in terms of the needs of seniors. One of the things I have liked the most about being at St. Camillus and having all these things to do, you don't have to do them. You can pick and choose the things that you'd like if you want them. If you want to go to this movie, there's very, very few people in all of the neighbors that I have that sort of say, well, where were you? Why, have you, and I mean, obviously, if you're missing from things for a while, they hope you're not in the next life. But the comfort and socialization and relaxing atmosphere and food, it's really wonderful. And whether it's on the elevator or the pub or there's 2 fine dining rooms or the socialization and just being with people that you've been acquaintances for a long time. I went to school my whole life in Milwaukee and worked downtown for my whole career, and then I taught at Marquette University for a number of years. So it's St. Camillus is very Catholic. It helps if that's your religion. It's not required, of course, but there are 2 daily masses, and on weekends masses are provided, and there's spiritual help, pastoral care as well. So anyway, it's been a good decision. I've been there 2 years, and I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it very much, and it's not the only continued care facility here in the area. There's quite a few of them. East Castle, of course, being another one, and St. John's on the Lake, and the Catholic Home, and a number, 2 or 3 others. But the whole idea of continued care life plan is what the bottom line is. I'm taken care of for the rest of my life in terms of whatever I need from a health care perspective, including memory care and then hospice at the end. So thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Yes. Thank you. So Dave, does that memory care kick in like now when I can't remember what I did with my keys? Can they? No, okay, darn it.
Sign up for it.
Oh, when you forget you have keys. That's a whole nother stage as we go through, but that's one part of it. So Dave, I appreciate it. We're going to ask Dave some questions as we go through as well. What I would first like to do is have Byron City just give a little kind of an idea of the situation that they've been through as well, in whatever terms or form you guys want to. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm going to talk to you about Byron's brother who was diagnosed with dementia, and the journey he took about 7 years from the time he entered a memory care center. And he was about 70 years old at this time. He was a farmer, and he at first had somebody that came to the house that kind of helped him while his wife was still working. She was about 68 at this time, and she was still working.
And so there was a companion that came to the house and spent the day with him. And then when she got home from work, he'd be home and she'd take care of, take care of him in the evening. So when he got to the point where that wasn't working anymore, he entered a memory care center. And his wife Sharon and we kind of explored several different places and chose one place for him. And he was in this place for about a year. And his wife continued working and visited him several times, almost every day. And but his wife refused to let them medicate him. So he became aggressive. And so they asked him to leave. So he was at this center for about a year when they asked him to leave. So we, along with his wife, had to find another place for him. And that was difficult because in his records, it was that he was aggressive. So not many places were willing to take him. But we did find a place that understood the reason he was that way was because he wasn't allowed to be medicated. So with that in mind, they accepted him. It was a place in Oshkosh, and it was a community, a life plan community system, and he was just in the memory care center of it. And he got along great there. We loved the place, they loved him, and it was all working out great. Subsequently, his wife was diagnosed with a neurological disease, and she digressed very fast and ended up in the nursing home of his facility. So he was in the memory care, she was in the nursing home, so we would take her in a wheelchair over to see him. So, which was really a good option because they needed to see each other, and that worked out. So she was in that facility for a few months before she passed, which left him in a memory care without a stop. And so we would visit him often, and he was in that facility for about 5 years. Really well taken care of. They loved him, and it was just the perfect situation. But if you are in that facility and you are no longer mobile, you have to leave. So we had to find a third place for him. And so we did, and he survived there for a few months before he passed away. So it was a long journey. We were very grateful for the good care that he got, and it was an experience that we learned a lot about.
Thank you. You want to say?
Good.
It's up to you. Okay. Good. You got anything else?
Yeah, in this case. Glenn and Sharon had no children. Sharon was from a family of 10, and my brother is one of 5 boys in our family. And in our family, we grew up on a farm, probably a farm that had been in the Lumens family for over 100 years. And out of our 5 boys, Glenn was the only one that agreed to stay on and farm it. So he did that, and well, you know how farming has changed. It went from a time when you needed 5 boys to take care of 160 acres. Now it's way different, with the new machinery and so forth. So he not only took care of the home place of 160 acres, but my dad years ago had bought the farm just across the highway of 80 acres. So it was 240 acres. So he did well with that, no children. So we got to the point of recognizing that he was in the early stages of dementia, which was tough to see. He did things like put gasoline in a diesel engine tractor and so forth. But luckily, and I'm looking over at the lawyers and the financial planning, I don't know how influential we were with them, but they went to the local family lawyer that we've had for years in the family and decided to get power of attorney and get the medical care taken care of. So that was a real blessing that we did that. The other blessing is because he was going fast, they decided to sell our home farm place. Well, then we introduced them to Gentian and said, okay, now we're going to get this. You know how poor farmers always claim they are, and they are poor of all their farming, but when they sell their property, their land, they become instant millionaires.
They do, yeah, it's true.
And so what do we do with that? So that was another blessing when we introduced them to Gentian, and they immediately fell in love with the Gentian crew, and I think it was vice versa as well.
It was mutual, yeah.
So things started lining up, and then as my brother regressed, and our local family lawyer dealt with so many of these farms like this. He gave, and they selected me, my brother and his wife Sharon selected me to be power of attorney. And our family lawyer back there wrote up a tremendous POA agreement that gave me power for financial decisions and so forth, which was a true blessing. So because of all of those things falling into place, we talked about having to downsize the house. We had to clean out his house, but with lots of siblings coming in and lots of nieces and nephews, that went pretty well. We had time to do it. But the thing I was most blessed with is the fact that we were able to take all that money from those farm sales, have it invested. They more than had enough to support Sharon in the nursing home part and Glenn in the memory care unit. So there was really no question about that. And there was enough left over to honor all of the things they'd put in their will.
That's right.
So I'm most appreciative for our local family lawyer who agreed to have them sign the POAs and so forth, for Gentian to hold the money and give us advice on how to dispose with it. And then there was, all the other agreements that came along.
Yeah.
So it's not something I wish on everybody to go through. It wasn't easy, but
I appreciate it.
it worked out tremendously. So that's, and my brother passed peacefully 2 years ago, and his memory is well honored.
Well, so the funny thing about Glenn, thank you, please. So when I first met Glenn, he'd walked into the office. I kind of knew, he said maybe he had to, you'd have never known. He's telling me stories about this heart attack and a bear and all this, and he's just happy as all get out. There's no way. He's absolutely fantastic. You would find him incredibly engaging. He just really was. He's that kind of guy. He'd laugh all the time, even if it wasn't funny, which I appreciate. So I think that was, just to know, that doesn't matter. That's funny. So he'd always smile as he come in. But again, you hear these turns. So the whole point of this is to give you some ideas here of real things that occur in life that you may be called to deal with. It's not. They're not looking at it for themselves, but they've now got an experience what they can use, which is substantial. So thank you all for really sharing with us. These are wonderful, intimate moments, and they've been kind enough to share these with us. My question is for you. Is there anything that you would like to ask them as far as in their situation, things they thought of, things you just have questions about? You can raise your hand, feel free. Peter has a microphone. He'll run around as well. If not, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. No? I can formulate some. Zach has one.
Byron
There you go.
and Cindy, when you was determined that you were the financial power, when it was determined that you were the financial power of attorney, what was the hardest step to find a location for it? You got a lot of different options. How did you even start the process?
Yeah, so the question is, when they were determined to be power of attorney and they had to make those decisions, how did you make those? There was so much going on. How did you make those decisions? What was the toughest part?
Well, at first Sharon was still alive, and so Sharon had done some investigation on her own. So we went along as kind of the advisors to that, to back her up, to have her back on some of the things that they would be telling her, so more than one set of ears would hear what was going on. And so that's what we went through. And we wanted, our family farm is in the Waupun area in Fond du Lac County. So they wanted some location within a certain amount of miles, so family could visit nieces, nephews, siblings, and so forth. So that kind of restricted our search. So the first one they found was in Beaver Dam, you know.
And you can go online and find a whole list of places and what they provide. But I'd say one of the best ways is by word of mouth. Ask somebody who's been in, had some association with one, have a family member, been cared for there. That's really, I think, the best way to know what each facility is like.
Good point. Any other questions? Mike Mann. It's going to be just my team asking questions. That's great.
Okay. Yeah. My question would be, when you moved into the senior living, how is it like that? So your family comes in and comes there, and they come to see you and stay with you, things like that. Other things for them to do with you there. But thought that I feel that a lot of people feel that they're losing, come back to their family. I have home, house, and not stay or anything like that. Curious what like.
So the question is, once you moved in, is there a stigma with people coming to visit you, or how does that visit work? Is that kind of crimped any of your style of having, I know your family coming in?
Good question. And the answer is most of these senior life plan communities have guest rooms. And I have used the guest rooms over the last couple of years 4 or 5 times for my brother who comes in from Washington, D.C., and his wife and my daughter and kids. And they're fully furnished 1 or 2 bedroom apartments, and they're $100 a night. So it's very reasonable, very very handy, and they're with me. They're not in my apartment, but they're down the hall or in the next. They're 5 minutes away, and most of the facilities that I'm aware of have that kind of opportunity where you need a little lead time, obviously, but there are guest rooms, fully furnished guest rooms, towels, linen, everything. It's just like a hotel or motel room.
Mm-hmm. And go, yeah, please, absolutely.
My mom and Gary's aunt lived at Villages at Manor Park, and they had a bistro that we could reserve to have family parties. We just had potlucks, but it was an opportunity for the family to get together. Right. And I was just curious, about other facilities. We weren't supposed to use the little kitchenette we weren't supposed to use it. So we just carried everything back to my mom's apartment. Yeah. But I just wondered about other facilities and whether they have a party room.
Yeah. Great question. I think you heard the question.
Are there party rooms? Yeah, there's plenty. A lot of parties. And there's at St. Camillus, which I'm most familiar with, there's a beautiful 14-person dining room with a dining table, a fireplace, and then there's smaller rooms. And the organization, which has been in that location for 102 years, serving the needs of seniors, 102 years. St. Camillus has been in the same location in Wauwatosa. In any event, they do provide very efficient, very inexpensive catering. So you can have a lunch, or you can have a dinner, or you can have cocktails in the pub and go to one of the community rooms, and there's a lot of parties, and unfortunately, a number of those parties are celebrations of life. And a lot of that happens. But birthday parties and a lot of they're just as the guest facilities and then the party rooms provide everything you've had, if not more, than you have in your home.
And at Newcastle, just down the road as well, Julie said, yes, they've got those same kind of facilities that are rooms to be able to use as potluck. My wife, Deb, is over here, and she actually was in charge of therapies at Village of Manor Park, so she may have a word or two to say as well. The coolest thing about Village of Manor Park is that the first time I went there, they could all see this word called sucker written on my forehead. So I'm walking in, and every story's like, oh my God. And I go, Deb, how can you walk right past them? If you don't, you'll never get through. So like an hour later, she realized that I had to be careful with that and go, okay, Chris has to come with me now.
Well, I was just going to mention, usually if you just have a visitor, they can usually add a meal ticket onto, like, people are thinking big parties, but if you just have someone coming by, they can usually join you for lunch, right? And yeah, or dinner and have a meal, right? Wasn't really planning on speaking, but I did work for 10 years in long-term care, and I'm a speech language pathologist by trade, and I managed physical therapists and occupational therapists. So a lot of these facilities, when you have this continuum of care, have a rehab department, which you may at some point need. Maybe you fell, maybe, there's other needs, activities of daily living, or just different things can come up where you might take advantage of rehab services. But if you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer. But also, that continuum of care is very key. So where I worked, there was condominiums, independent apartments, assisted living apartments, CBRF added, memory care added, and a skilled nursing facility. So we had all that level of care, and it is beautiful when one spouse is in one part of the building and can go visit the other spouse in the other part of the building. It's a beautiful transition there. And then also, I can just tell you if you have questions, I'm currently going through this with my parents, who are 90 and 85. I'm the youngest of 8. And they, so just think about it from the perspective of your children, because I'm the one, it kind of comes on me, that's going through boxes and boxes and boxes, literally cardboard boxes, papers, trying to get their finances set apart from the medical paperwork, from the interesting article from 1980 that's cut out of a newspaper, oh my goodness, and you can imagine the photographs of a family of 10 over all these years. So think about it also from the perspective of your children coming through your home to help you someday. You're going to want to do it yourself, right? Because my mom's a little embarrassed. Oh, I still have that, So I'm trying to help them get organized. I'm trying to help them thin out this house. And they're very willing to do it, but I kind of know how to do it sensitively. You might have a child that wants to come through and just, Mom, Dad, no, this has got to go. We know that's not the way to do it. Maybe tell them how you want it done, or tell them how it will help you. It's just communicate well, because it's sensitive when you're starting to thin out. So, and it was a big house to thin out.
Yeah, it was. There's a lot to do. Thank you. So Deb worked at this place called you heard about this. It used to be called Friendship Village. It changed its Village of Manor Park. But the coolest thing is the first time when I rolled up in my, car, I'm like, what is this? There's a gentleman outside with a red hat and a red shirt on, smoking. His shirt says, 101, still having fun.
He picked up cigar smoking for the heck of it.
He picked up cigar smoking because he said, what the hell do I care? Then the next year, I think it was blue, it said 102, whatever rhymes with that, you. Yeah. But it was just, this is a guy who sat out front. It was absolutely hilarious.
I just have one comment that I've been to a number of these seminars, these kinds of seminars in Florida, here in Milwaukee and area and so forth. And the bottom line always is, from residents like me, is the theme for today, which was on the first slide. If you're considering doing something like this, do it before you need to have it done. Do it before you need to have it done, because when you have to have it done, as we were saying before, it's a very different world. You're into health issues, you're into insurance issues, you're into estates, planning things. And if you are considering moving from a home or a condominium into a life plan community, wherever it is, whenever it is, you'll find, I find 90% of the people that are moving in to the life plan care facility at St. Camilla's, they're very happy they did it. And a lot of them say, well, I wish we would have done this a little earlier. Again, when you're able to do it on your own and you aren't looking at your children and and other folks to help you do it, you can do it on your own and should do it on your own.
Thank you, Dave. Any other questions before they've done a wonderful job so far. Any questions? Comments? Mike, man, you know what? Mike, that's too many. No, I'm just kidding. Mike, he's got as many questions as I do. So between him and I, we'll talk forever.
Unfortunately, keep everybody here.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite as long as Chris could. For Karen and Cindy, my question to you is, reflecting back on Glenn's journey, is there anything that you could have done different?
So the question is, reflecting back on Glenn's journey, is there anything you would have done different?
I don't think so because, Sharon was the primary person for Glenn at the time that I might have made a different decision than she did. But I don't think we would have done anything different. I feel really blessed by how he was well taken care of during those 7 years.
Yeah, that's a hard question to look back now, but I guess you can say how things have turned out. You can say, yeah, we have no regrets. Let's put it that way. I just, you wish things would have been different at the beginning, but we knew how it ended. So.
Yeah. Well, and Byron and Cindy put a lot of their life into her brother-in-law and his brother. So that's the thing too. It's an incredible gift that they gave him of their time. And it's a family member, right? So this is a thing to consider as well of those who do that for you. So, Deb, you had a quick question?
Not really related to moving, but just to note that a lot of people with my charts these days, if you need help with medical decisions and understanding medical lingo, I have access to my dad's medical chart. I have access to my mom's medical chart. I can communicate with the doctors even though I'm here and there in Iowa. I can help them.
Yeah. So sometimes the communications gap of where's that printed page versus you can get it online now, I call it a communicasm. That was when it's older and it's a newer thing and I don't know what the heck to do. So that's between her and her mom, right? She can connect the communicasm between that. So sometimes having a younger person available, like our daughter Samantha, would be perfect. She could probably just, there it is, Grandma, and it's done. But then she couldn't communicate it with her. So I think those are important things to consider as well. I appreciate that. So rather than keeping you guys up, we'll let you guys head back to your seats. Thank you so much. Let's all give them a great hand for sharing. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Appreciate it. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate you. So I had a couple of questions before we get to the next section, which is just the part where you get to interact with people. But this was kind of an interesting one because I'm usually like a concrete guy. I like to know certain facts. I'm a simplifier as well. I don't need to know everything about it. I need to know enough of the essential data, then I can make a decision, right? So for me, I asked a question, which is, according to research, about the average age people move into a retirement home or a retirement community. Anybody want to guess? David.
72.
72. Okay. Good guess. Anyone else? 77. Okay, good. What'd you say? 83. Good. These are all good guesses. I'm going to make an answer that's not quite perfect, but it's between 75 and 84. So I'm trying to measure right between it. That'd be 79, maybe 80. This is common, right? This is common. Now, continuing care residential communities, it's a bit different. It becomes younger because there's more independent living, right? The average age of somebody who's in a senior assisted living facility is 84. So I had a client who's in Minnesota who would be here if it was for Zoom, but they had a ton of questions. We went through this whole process with them. We spent 3 or 4 hours in this whole process, and they went and did all the investigation of a CCRC that was a life facility in Minneapolis. And then they got to the right part where you'd sign, and they go,
how old is the average person who moves in here? They're 72, by the way. And they go, right around 81, 82. So they go. So they stopped the process. They did not move in because they didn't feel they were ready, but they thought because they were so into it, and they really, it's called a lot of time's been invested. There's called an anchor. It's a human bias. It's called sunk cost bias. They put so much time. I better do this now. No. You've got the data. You understand it. Be cool with that. You can still stay in your home. So they did. But they're preparing to move in and decided that maybe this doesn't make sense for them right now. So it's a good point. Peter.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, they decided not to move now, but they actually put down a deposit on this location so that they're on a waiting list for a unit. So if one comes up, they can choose to take it, or they can decide to pass on it. The other thing that is available to them now, because they made this deposit, I didn't think it was $1,300.
Yes,
and they get
$1,300
$500 back if they decide to get off the list. They now are guaranteed a bed if they need short-term care. So if they have a stroke and need to rehab, they have a bed in this facility. So they don't have to be a resident yet to still potentially receive care there.
Yeah. So, on our journey, there's a lot of things you find that are correlative benefits, right? Correlative benefits that we want to share with you. You may want to find this facility that you want and put a deposit down. Julie, is that a common thing? Could you share with us? Yeah. I'm just running around here like, I got my steps in.
Yeah, so come early. That's what we say. If you start thinking about what occupancy levels are around here in the Metro Milwaukee area, you're going to start seeing them above 90%. What does that mean? It means that the boomers are starting to move in. The oldest boomer is now 78.
Right.
So the best thing to do is start early, start your search, and then get on a wait list for something that you want. We call it a ready list.
Yeah.
When you're ready,
yep.
The apartment's ready, then you move in. So yeah, I agree with you.
And you can also defer readiness, right? So let's say I'm not ready, but I'm at the top of the, still can defer readiness to move into it another time.
Right. So that's why I say you want transparency, get the contracts. Read what it says in their wait list. Now for us, our wait list is you have 3 times to turn down the same apartment. And at that third time, if you don't want it, you go to the bottom of the list. Question is, how long is that list for that apartment? Yeah. That's something you need to know.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Awesome. So some of the ideas, a few things during break, a few of you approached me. One idea too is how about some people here have degrees in certain areas that they're no longer interested in, but how about something with access to some place where I can continue to learn? I can go to educational opportunities and I can maybe get a degree in something or just attend classes, learn again, right? I've also talked to Concordia a lot about, say, listen, if you're looking at developing property, why don't you develop senior living inside the campus where you bring the benefit of the wisdom of the older members to the college-age kids who have no idea what they're talking about yet? Because it reinvigorates both. But I look at this as, why is that not something that's happening? Because our universities are having, the small private universities are having existential problems, as evidenced by one of the ones here and right down here in Cardinal Stritch. Right? So Lisa, yeah?
I was talking to Sue about this earlier, weren't we, Sue? Saying about in Europe, in many Scandinavian countries, they have a lot of elderly people live with college students. The college students get low housing and they live with elderly people and they learn from each other.
Yes, yeah. So I think there's actually a company called Elder Hostel. But that's not what it's named anymore. Now it's called Road Scholar. I always asked, is that a place where older people stay when they no, it's not. I thought it would be the same kind of thing, but it was a European-based company, but now they travel around the world. Deb and I met several of them when we were going to Argentina once. They were all, it's very cool things that are out there. I won't go into that rabbit hole. But I know many of you have been here for a long time now. Any questions you might have for me? So, Kitty, yes.
Yeah, so I've heard people waiting too long. Like they want to go to the apartments, but they really need skilled care at that point, or who makes the determination as to whether you need memory care? Because a lot of times there's that period where you don't think you do, but you do.
Yeah, the in-between. Yeah, so the question is, who makes the determination on whether you need memory care or don't need memory care? Or you need, you're going into a facility too late, you think you're here just for independent living, you really need assisted living as well. Julie, is that something that's made by the attorney, Julie, do you know? Or is that made by you guys when they come in? Yeah, as far as like qualifying for, so you should be memory care, but you don't think you are yet. Or you should be assisted living, but you think you're independent. Who makes those determinations?
So typically you visit with the nurse. For the community that I work with, we have a financial as well as a health piece. So we have to determine how long, if you're financially can qualify, but also your health has to be in good health. I see too many people waiting too long. When you do come in, if you come in as a couple, you could probably go independent. But if you come in individually, let's say you have cognitive decline, you'll sit in front of the nurse, and at that point, they'll make that decision and help you. How about not they make it? They help you make that decision. Your best step would be assisted living, or your best step would be, you're not independent, but your best step would be next phase, which would be.
So stay right here for this question, because is there anything a financial planner or financial planners can do to help the process for their clients as they're coming to see you? Would it be helpful if financial planners did this for you?
Actually, we just talked about that, yes. So we always ask, do you know your assets? Do you technically know what your income is and your assets are? So prior to coming into a community like ours or a community that's over there, know your financial situation. Make sure that you understand how much you have, because I think mostly, and we talked about this before, Chris, you could actually come and sit with Chris and he might just look at you and say, you know what, I know the cost at blah, blah, blah. I don't think that would be the right fit for you. And so trust your advisor first and make sure you understand the financial piece before you come to a community. So thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie.
Yeah, I always look at that because our group is just looked at for money, but I'm looking at this as care. This is a bigger picture for me, so I wanted to ask that question. What we're going to do at this moment then is we're going to allow the experts to kind of gather around their tables. Whether you have a Medicare, Medicaid question, you want to talk to people from the different locations as well. Or just talk to any one of the financial planners you've got in the back of the room too. Just questions that you might have about your situation. We allow for that. You're also free to take off and leave. You know, it's obviously we appreciate your time here. Hopefully this has been valuable to you. But we want to provide this resource as this way you can ask something you don't want to ask in front of 85 or 90 people as you go through. Because a lot of people have stage fright. Oh, I had a question, but I don't remember what it is, right? So that's a couple. Let me go through and see if there's anything left on my agenda here. It is. I've got 2 slides. Good. So the form is really designed it's for a formula for success. So we look at this as, at Gentian, we're plan it, live it, give it. And that's part of it. We also have something I have coming out that's going to be called Retire and Thrive. It's a book that you'll have as a resource to give to others and look at about what retirement process really is and the things to consider that aren't just monetary. So that book should be coming out in the next few months. You'll look for that. It's called Retire and Thrive. But as we go through, making a plan. These are some of the big pieces. Exercise regularly and stay active. Stay socially engaged. This shows text. I would actually take that text off. Stay socially engaged with people. Okay? I would never show that as text. That's not connected. That's reading, right? That's interest. You can see pictures, but you're not talking to people. And then don't be afraid to ask for help. That's the biggest thing. Don't be afraid. You're not alone in this as well. The one thing I did say, we talked about it earlier, is the stigma of, and I was going to ask a question up there, but I didn't want to belabor it. The stigma of, I'm now in a senior living facility. Does that exist? Who here is concerned that once you say, oh, I live at San Camillus, they think you're an old person? Or Newcastle, or Lasada, or whatever, right? Anybody? David said, yeah, but you are. You're not. I'm just saying these. So this is what I said. I think somebody moved in one, and he goes, hey, you know what the problem with this place is? What? It's all the old people here. It was this is what David said. He said that to me, yeah. I didn't want to disclose it, but it was pretty funny. But as you go, think the stigma. Remember, your identity is you. If you really care at this stage how other people think about you, we've got a little bit of other work to do. Because when you're a teenager, all you thought is everybody was looking at you. And they're all looking at me and everything. And then as you get to be middle-aged, you're like, were people looking at me? Are people looking? And once you get to be maybe a little older, you're like, nobody's ever been looking at me. Right? So if there's three stages of life, that's where we get. But I do want to address that identity stigma, which is, hey, moving into this. I have 55-year-olds making massive decisions to move someplace else where I got a person, Pam, who's actually at Sun City in Arizona. She's like the real estate magnate of there. She used to buy the apartments when people didn't want them. She'd redecorate them and sell them for 50 grand more. Just boom, just like this, every single time. But she loves it. She's an ambassador for that community if somebody comes in. There's a lot of resources out there. Make sure you ask for help. Let me ask, how was this program today? Is this beneficial? Good, good, good. You know, hopefully it's serving a need. We're undecided whether or not it becomes an annual program or becomes something where we bring in some other resources too. But I think the resources we've had today, I've got to say, are fabulous. It's absolutely fantastic. So let's give a hand to everybody here who's an expert. Now, most importantly, the two people who are standing right there, you see one is blonde, one is brunette. This is Jenny and Ashley. They are the head of our client experience team. Now, ask me 25 years ago if I thought I was going to have a client experience team. I am so fortunately blessed, and it's thanks to you, that they are here to put a program like this on for you. They simply bring me in, wind me up, and they've taken care of anything else. So we got to give a huge hand to them. So these kind of programs are hopefully beneficial. In the future, we may have one on giving, charitable giving. How do we give in a great way? We may have something like this, but bringing these forums to you, we hope, is of value. So please feel free. Ashley has a little survey on the back of these things, and you can QR code that with your phone. If you need paper, I'm sorry. We're trying to eliminate waste so that we don't bring this survey home and you leave it at your house, right, to clean out later. And your children can throw it away. Yeah, now you throw it out. So that gets, see, that works. So we've got that as well. But what we want to do is have our experts around the tables now, and they'll be standing at the tables over here. Feel free. Go ahead and mingle with them. Come mingle with us. But I want to thank you so much for your time, energy, and attention, questions. We appreciate your presence here today. We appreciate the introductions that you give to us. We are blessed here. Remember, too, the awards that our firm gets are ours. Do you hear this? You look around the room here. When you see this firm's name in a magazine, it is your name in a magazine. So these are our awards, ours together. Thank you for your trust. I want to make sure you understand that. So with that, congratulations to all of you as well. Appreciate it.